time we are in calls for innovative means of doing things. That's why we find the need to meet on this platform. The Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana is highly grateful and pleased to have distinguished guests to grace this occasion. They are Professor Godfrey Bopkin, Senior Lecturer, School of Business, University of Ghana; Mr. Andrew Ahiaku, Head of Banking Sector, Asley Africa, Kenya; Mr. Fertis Miller, Governance Advisor on Food and Agriculture, Tony Blair Institute for Global Team; and lastly, Mr. Naliban Ujangi, CEO, Agric and More Limited, Ghana. We hope that this meeting will be interesting and beneficial to all and sundry. Once again, you are warmly welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eben.
Okay.
Eben is one of our team members with the Chamber of Agribusiness, one of our volunteers. We would like to call on the CEO himself, Mr. Anthony Mox, first opening remarks.
A very good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Dr. Kwejo Ahiapa. I must say that this is a very unique opportunity for us as a private sector people, stakeholders, value chain players, to actually come to understand what is required when we're talking about the distractions that the COVID-19 has brought into our activities. I wouldn't want to talk too much, but first of all, I want to appreciate the immense support of GIZ MWAP for giving us the needed support to be able to host this all-important webinar. I also want to acknowledge MOFA, Madam Angela, who is the director for MMPPD and the chief director. I also want to acknowledge the importance role that has been played along the line by our various speakers, especially Professor Godfrey Bopkin, Andrew, and Naliban himself, and also Fetis. This program will give us a deep understanding as to what we expect and how we can leverage on the various distractions to be able to put together a very strong and a robust agribusiness sector economy. We are in this economy, and many others have acknowledged that we are in the new normal, and the new normal requires something like this: an interface between the goods and services all on a cyber platform. And I'm sure many years to come have this cyber engagement. The agriculture sector in Ghana, having seen much of strategic efforts with regards to the COVID-19 emergency actions. But I believe that this platform will then again serve us as another impetus for us to influence government decision and also to collaborate with development partners and all multinationals and the private sector most especially, to deepen the PPP and the local content aspect of what we do and to make our industry once again very robust. I welcome everybody, and I appreciate all your efforts. Thank you very much, and a very good morning to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Welcome once again. Like to get straight into the first section. So two of our speakers will give their input. After that, we'll have a Q&A section. And for the meantime, while the talk is going on, while the education is going on, if you have questions for them that pop with a point they raise, please quickly type them in the chat box or amplify them to the speakers to respond to them specifically for you. We would like to welcome our speakers for today, Professor Bopkin, Mr. Andrew Ahiaku, Mr. Fertis Miller, and Mr. Nalban Wonjaji. Our speakers, you're warmly welcome. I want to take this opportunity to especially acknowledge your presence and to say thank you for accepting the invitation to assist us in this webinar. So without much ado, I'll call on our first speaker, Prof. Before I hear, please take over to start with this first section for us. So let's welcome Professor Bopkin.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a bright day. It's a beautiful day. It's certainly an opportunity to make an impact. And let me express my appreciation and gratitude first and foremost to God who has kept us and preserved us in the midst of COVID-19. Certainly, God is not ignorant of what is going on, and He hasn't lost control. He is in charge. To that extent, we thank Him. And thank you, More Anthony, and all the organizers, and also you, the participants, for making time so we all share ideas and advance the frontier of knowledge, particularly in the area of agriculture and agribusiness, as we seek to take advantage of the opportunities presented to us by COVID-19. It is not all weeping. There is some opportunity as a result of COVID-19. And I believe whilst we keep an eye on the downside threats, we can also scale up in terms of taking advantage with the opportunities that come along with it. So before I would like to project my slides very quickly and then go straight into the discussion. And of course, we all can make input. We all can make suggestions to improve it as we go along. There's a lot out there that you know that I can also tap into as we all discuss collectively in exchanging ideas as iron sharpened iron. We are all aware that as a country, like many other countries today, we have moved from the first stage of the reaction or the response to COVID-19 to the second stage. And 3 stages have been identified. The first stage has to do with the containment that were institutionalized. Some of them involved lockdown, social distancing, a number of those interventions that we did. The second phase is where we have decided as a country to live with the virus, whether we like it or not. That is where we are now. So you realize that as a country, our strategy has changed from where we prioritized saving lives that came along with the strict containment arrangements like the 3-week lockdown of Greater Accra and Greater Kumasi. Of course, the economic implication of that is clear for all of us. And even not only in Ghana, but other countries that have done similar lockdowns with the extended versions have recorded greater economic impact. A good example will be Singapore, that has seen a sharp contraction in their GDP, plunging them into some kind of recession. The second phase is where we decided to save lives and save livelihoods at the same time. In other words, we have decided as a country to live with the virus. With that strategy, it's impossible to come out of it unhurt. So it involves some kind of trade-off. So you open up the economy to live with the virus. Now, that strategy is only effective to the extent that the immune system of the population is very strong. That way you can live with your enemy. If you understand your enemy and you know how to cope well with your enemy, you can easily live with your enemy. We are told in the last 2 briefings by the president that we can boost our immune system by consuming local products. He talked about contumely and those things. Certainly, that does not take us to the domain of health. That straight away puts us in the domain of agriculture and agribusiness. Our eating habit holds the key then to our immune system as we decide to live with the virus. To that extent, agriculture and agribusiness then becomes fundamental and should be a pillar to the economic recovery we are all hoping for. Of course, that is not to say we should neglect the critical health spending, but we know that the containment measures that were put in place have had more devastating effects on our lives than the virus itself. And to that extent, we are not only in health crisis. So there's a need to have a delicate balance between prioritizing health spending and also spending appropriately in the area of agriculture and agribusiness as we boost the immune system of the population and make sure that hunger does not kill ahead of the virus. My presentation will look at COVID-19 basically and the impact on the economy, which we have looked at. We look at agriculture and agribusiness in pre-pandemic times, agribusiness financing challenges and the opportunities in there, and then some kind of recommendation going forward. As the earlier speaker mentioned in terms of the introductory remarks, that the impact of COVID-19 is there for everyone to see. In fact, it's one basic development in our world today that does not require you having a PhD in economics to understand the impact, because the impact is pervasive and it cuts across the entire society, and it doesn't exempt any institution or sector, whether it's health or finance or agriculture or even religious bodies. Churches have not been spared either. So if you look at the impact, and so far our attention has focused on other areas, but if you look at the impact of COVID-19 on the religious bodies, institutions, is huge, because the churches and the other religious bodies also run some quasi-businesses, health institutions, and all of that. Again, when you do a lockdown, it puts a disproportionate impact on the vulnerable in our society who must step out every day before they can earn a living. But to the well-to-do, they can prioritize health because they have enough deep freezers and fridge to store enough food for the next 3 weeks or 3 months. But for the average poor in our society, they actually don't even have a fridge to even have anything in it. If they don't step out, they are not eating. We have seen the GDP contraction. We have seen the fiscal losses in terms of government revenue envelope. Over 5 billion cedis has been lost because of COVID-19 in our petroleum revenue receipt envelope. And that is huge, and that has implication for the programs and expenditures that have been earmarked to be funded from the oil revenue. When it comes to other important tax handles, the losses are obvious. So far, preliminary estimates suggest that over $200 billion is being lost by way of income losses in Sub-Saharan Africa alone, and that is very huge. And I want to say that given the fluid nature of COVID-19, no one is able to get it right. Since January, the world-known institutions like the IMF and the World Bank and the UN Economic Commission and all of that have had to revise their projections more than 3 times in the first half of the year alone. That tells you that the situation is very fluid. The strategy that worked last week is perhaps a recipe for disaster the following week. That is how fluid the situation is. COVID-19 has elevated the inequality in our society, and the vulnerable are bearing a far greater proportion of the adverse distributional effect of COVID-19. We have had to scale up on health spending. The government has put in place fiscal and economic stimulus arrangements as enabled by our limited fiscal space. The efficiency of that we can talk about some other time to come. So there are real challenges, job losses. When output contracts sharply the way we have seen, then it means that you will require less input, and labor is one of the inputs in the production process. So it is expected that job losses has come to stay. So people who have lost their jobs, it is not expected that they can even pick it up in the next year or so. And the reason I'm saying so, and it's the reason why we have to be prudent with our spending on our savings, so that once you exhaust your savings, your buffer, credit card balance, and all of that, you have practically joined the vulnerable group. So Ghana, for instance, we are not expecting a quick V-shaped recovery. No, we do not have the fundamentals to be able to aid the recovery as fast as other developed countries like the US, UK, and the others who have better fiscal space to do so. So in other words, we are in for a long haul, and it's a reason why we need to tighten our bets. So if you lost your job early part of this year, it is not our understanding that you can get it back by the end of this year or next year or in 2 years. Ghana's economic recovery from our preliminary estimate will take us more than 3 years. Will take us more than 3 years. And the next important question will be, what kind of economic recovery do we want that Ghana wants to have? Are we going to have the same jobless growth that we have seen in pre-pandemic times? Certainly not. What we are advocating, and for which reason this seminar couldn't have been better timed than this time, is that we are looking for people-centered economic policy recovery programs where people are at the heart of the policies. So we go beyond the usual talk of GDP this, GDP that, and all of that. Then talk about how those policies would directly have a demonstrable link to the lives of Ghanaians. Because the growth that we have seen in the last 3 decades have not reflected in the lives of ordinary Ghanaians. We have seen economic growth that left behind a larger proportion of Ghanaians. Okay, and there's nothing national about the national cake. It is only a theoretical word. Not many people can demonstrate their link to the national cake. We must reverse this post-COVID-19 and make the economic work for ordinary Ghanaians. This is the direction we are looking at. And as I go on, I will demonstrate why agriculture and agribusiness is the one important means of demonstrating that people will be at the center of the next economy we are going to build. We have also seen dwarfed remittances and increase in poverty because of COVID-19. And why am I saying this? Because if you look at employment dynamics in Ghana, more than 60% of Ghanaians employed are in the agriculture sector, mostly in rural agriculture. And they have gone into that kind of employment as a last resort. And almost all of them are underemployed. Now, we have seen from the late 70s, because of the rush and the lack of appreciation, we bought into expensive IMF World Bank-led economic recovery programs in Africa. You can talk about the structural adjustment programs with a financial sector component called the Financial Sector Adjustment Program and all of that. I want to submit, and evidence support that whilst those programs made some gains, they were more at the macro level. The gains made in the last 3 years did not reflect in the pocket of Ghanaians. So as a reaction, we developed the same IMF World Bank push on our throat again poverty reduction programs, anchored also by the Millennium Development Goals. And we are told that the Millennium Development Goals actually halved poverty, particularly in Sub-Saharan Africa and all of that. But the evidence today is that those gains that were made have practically been reversed because of COVID-19. And more than 27 million Africans, majority of them in Sub-Saharan Africa, are falling into poverty because of COVID-19. As we speak, even in pre-pandemic times, 6 people fall into poverty every 60 seconds. So you can do the analysis yourself, that if in pre-pandemic times, 6 people fall into poverty in every 60 seconds, you can imagine the exaggeration now. And since we started this program, you can count the number of people who would have fallen into poverty and how many people would have fallen into poverty by the time we are done. So we have a big challenge on our hand that requires innovation and people-centered approach in our post-COVID-19 economic recovery. Some statistics here in the agriculture sector, which plays a key role in agribusiness as well. So you can see in terms of sectorial composition of Ghana's GDP, you can see that agriculture has lost the leading role. Okay, from independence running all the way to the 60s, 70s, agriculture was the main contributor to GDP. Particularly with the introduction of oil in 2011, the composition of our GDP has changed. Of course, that composition and transformation has offered very limited job opportunities for Ghanaians. So now we see industry and then we see service rather leading. But Ghana is not known for service. We are not known for service. Let's not kid ourselves. We are not known for service. And if you look at service and the subcategorization, Ghanaians play very little role in that area. Take the financial sector alone. In terms of insurance and all of that, Ghana has practically lost control. We've lost control of that sector to foreign players. So if you look at our economy today, even though we have seen positive GDP, that GDP does not reflect in the pocket of Ghanaians. And it's also because of the subsectors that are driving the GDP growth. Because when you find that agriculture has lost its leading role and the growth in agriculture, which I'll demonstrate very soon, is also dwindling, then it tells you that once majority of Ghanaians derive their livelihood from agriculture, agribusiness, and that sector is not doing well, that also tells you that majority of Ghanaians are not doing well, because the sector where they derive their livelihood from is also not doing well. But the sectors that are doing well are heavily dominated by foreign players. And it's the reason why we see growth here and we don't get to celebrate it. So Ghana's economy is almost like a factory where we pound enough fufu for others to go and eat. So if you look at investment in the industry that is doing well and service that is doing well, the investment is coming from foreign investors. And the return on capital is so huge over the last 3 decades, whilst return on labor supplied by Ghanaians locals is very, very small. To that extent, we don't get to retain a sizable portion of the growth dividend. This is Ghana's problem. And we don't need a prophet to tell us we need to correct this. Now you can see the growth in agriculture over the years. 2014, agriculture sector growth 0.9%, 2.3%. You can see that across the various years. But you can see that agriculture picked up some way, somehow in 2017. And the reason is simple. Sorry. The reason is simple. It is because of the planting for food and jobs that government decided to implement in 2017. And that also caused spending in agriculture to increase. And once the spending increased, we saw that agriculture sector growth also inched up to 6.1%. Since then, the funding in that sector has declined, and the growth has also followed in that same trajectory. And that is why the topic for this seminar is fundamental: financing. Because there's a demonstrable link between scaling up financing or investment in agriculture sector and agriculture sector growth. So it means that it's within control, largely. It's within control. Now, since the topic is about financing agribusiness to improve livelihoods, there's a demonstrable link in literature that agriculture offers the direct link to improve livelihoods in Ghana and Africa for that matter. So if you look at this table, for instance, you see output multiplier and the various sectors. You will see income multiplier, you will see employment multiplier. Now, you look at the first one, which is agriculture. So in terms of agriculture, in terms of the output multiplier, agriculture is not the leading. So because you can talk about mining, which is here, you can talk about electricity, gas, and steam. You can talk about water supply and then sewage. Fine. In all of this, we don't have control also over this because output is not necessarily what is in your pocket. But let's look at the income multiplier of the various subsectors. You'll find that agriculture has the highest. So you see, in terms of income multiplier, agriculture has 2.9%. In terms of an uptick. Again, in terms of employment multiplier, agriculture has the highest in this country. So what it means is that to improve lives of ordinary Ghanaians, and lives here we can proceed by income. Okay, others can also proceed by long life expectancy and all of that. But income plays a very key role. So if you want to scale up the income of ordinary Ghanaians, then agriculture has the highest multiplier effect. And if you want to talk about employment generation in Ghana, the most effective means of creating employment in this country is agriculture and agribusiness. This is what empirical data does for us. And empirical data then should feed policy formulation and direct resource allocation by government and also the private sector. So agribusiness has a very large multiplier effect, 1.8%. And agribusiness creates over 750 jobs with every $1 million output. So if we generate an output of $1 million in the agribusiness, it comes along with 750 jobs. And now I'll tell you why Ghana cannot cry anymore. Because the food deficit in Africa is over $35 billion. And the food deficit in Africa represents over $50 billion worth of investment opportunity for us in Ghana. As we have signed up onto the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, that means that the food deficit, whilst it's a challenge for Africa, is an opportunity for Ghana to take advantage of. And when we talk about food production and food processing and linking that to agribusiness, this represents a low-hanging fruit for us. So within 6 months, 1 year, we can actually fill that gap, and that is huge business for us. So if $1 million can create 750 million jobs, what will happen if we're able to do, even let's say $1 billion? So if you do $1 billion, that tells you the number of jobs that can be created. You know what? You don't need a prophet to prophesy on 31st December that this is the way to go. There's empirical data to tell us that our own future is at the end of our own arm. But we all understand that agribusiness is not the same as agriculture, but there's a link in that space. And that is the way we need to go, particularly in improving smallholder farmers who produce more than 70% of the food consumed locally. Then we can scale up the employment and income generation of those people. In addition to the earlier statistics, I want to put across that agriculture sector has the highest inequality reducing effect among all the subsectors in Ghana at negative 0.41 to a cedi spend or whatever amount spent. So that tells you that if we want to narrow the inequality and drag millions of Ghanaians out of poverty, agriculture is the salvation. It's the only way and is the practical way. So agriculture can lead the recovery. But we may decide as a country that we don't want agriculture to be the mainstay, but it's a good starting point. Just as the Bible says that man does not live by bread alone, the admission is that bread is a good point to start off. So agriculture Africa has food nutrition deficit that Ghana can take advantage of, particularly also because we have signed on to the African Continental Free Trade Area, and we should be able to take advantage of that. These are the low-hanging fruit for Ghana that we can take advantage of. So Ghana has a better comparative advantage in agribusiness, given the vast expanses of arable land, fresh water that we can use. And if you look at the European Union, Canada, US, and the rest of them, typically, if we're able to meet all the conditions, they tend to value the kind of agribusiness product that comes from Ghana, or agricultural product that comes from Ghana. Now, why COVID-19 is a game changer for the agriculture sector? The pandemic-induced runs on food, evidenced by inflation, opens opportunities for agribusiness and agriculture. And we should be able to take advantage of that. As we speak right now, 820 million people globally go to bed hungry. Whilst it's a challenge and it's a negative news, that is business opportunity. More hungry people, go feed them, and you are in business. 2 billion people are overweight due to imbalances in food. This is opportunity. Let's produce that. Let's do value addition. Let's open up the entire value chain, and we are in business for the future. Our going concern will be secured. Africa imports food in excess of $35 billion annually. Colleagues, why should we sit down and be in Africa where we have signed up for the African Continental Free Trade and report news like this, that Africa collectively imports food? Means that we are unable to feed ourselves as a continent. Meanwhile, Africa has more than half of the world's arable land and freshwater bodies. We have more than half of that. Why should we be importing food like this when we are told that with an output of $1 million USD, $1 million, 750 jobs can be created, and you have a huge food deficit of 35 billion. Why aren't we producing? Why can't Africa feed itself and even think about feeding the rest of the world? and Ghana should be able to take advantage. I want to submit respectively that what COVID-19 has done, even to our neighbors, is a big opportunity for Ghana. As we speak right now, 45 million Nigerians are heading to food and nutrition crisis because of COVID-19. That is more than Ghana's population. And we are talking about our neighbors, Nigeria. This is investment opportunity. This is what Ghana as a country should engage our attention that how do we take advantage of this? Ghana's neighbors, Togo, Burkina Faso, etc., could soon be depending on Ghana because of the impact of food, the Sahel, the crisis, the army worm, and all of that from Niger and all of that. If we are not careful, we are likely to see more of south-south migration simply because of food crisis. So we saw during the lockdown that people were crossing from Togo, from Burkina Faso into Ghana, maybe to have better health services and all of that. What it means is that when you are surrounded by neighbors who have food deficits and you have arable land like Ghana has, why should we be importing vegetable from Burkina Faso? Which theory can help us to understand that? So demand for food in Africa far outweighs food production. If you look at rate of population growth in Africa and you look at rate of food production, there's a gap. There's a negative gap that we can close. And Ghana should be thinking of taking advantage of that. 1 in every 4 persons in sub-Saharan Africa is malnourished. So the African food import represents an annual 50 billion investment opportunity that Ghana can take advantage of. What are the challenges in terms of agribusiness financing? And whilst I talk about challenges, I want us to look at them within the context of it being an opportunity also. Because I've told you the opportunities. And in standard finance literature, investment decision precedes financing decision. So what we have is the opposite of what Japan and the others have. They have financing, but they are lacking investment opportunity. We have huge investment opportunity, and we lack the financing opportunity. But it's easier when you have opportunity, you have investment opportunity to take time to arrange for the financing. So we have better leverage, making progress than the developed and advanced countries today, because they have limited investment opportunity, whilst we have huge investment opportunity, but the financing constraint. The reason is simple. The regulatory environment needs to improve. The regulatory environment is not so conducive to private sector investment in agribusiness in Ghana. And that is a challenge to private sector involvement in that sector. Only 1% of the commercial lending is directed to agriculture in Africa, and Ghana is not an exception. Financial institutions are reluctant to accept the risk prevalent in agriculture sector, such as drought, flood, pest, diseases, and all of that, and the high transaction cost. These are things that we need to be able to address. Because for the banker, if you lend to a farmer, the risk is very high, because the farmer, on his way from farm, something could swallow him. And then that is it. So for that reason, they wouldn't want to lend to the agriculture sector. We need to improve the regulatory environment. We need to do some kind of pooling, risk pooling, and all of that to make that sector a little bit attractive. In any case, given the low savings rate in Africa and Ghana for that matter, the limited financing available, the other critical sectors like industry and service are competing them away. So what is the incentive for a bank to lend to somebody, a farmer, when somebody in the import sector is looking for that same money? This is what is happening in this country. The higher interest rate is a sin to agribusiness growth. It's not just a challenge, it's a sin. Colleagues, if somebody goes to a bank to go and borrow at 30% to do agribusiness, to go into agriculture, you have to be unique to break even. Let me ask you, what kind of business can you do in Ghana such that your margin can be more than 30% to just meet the cost of financing alone? Meanwhile, to go into agribusiness, you require more than finance input costs. You need labor input costs, finance input costs, physical infrastructure input costs, digital infrastructure input costs. Please, this does not constitute enabling. When Ghana, we are talking about enabling environment, it's about time as a country we define what an enabling environment is. For us in Ghana, what is it that constitutes enabling environment? Enabling environment cannot be an interest rate of 25%. It is impossible. Look at the unreliable power supply. Look at the huge traffic. Look at data costs in this country. How do you do business and survive in such an environment? We need to be practical, and we need to sympathize with businesses, particularly in the agribusiness and agriculture sector, and make sure that lending is supportive. And when we are talking about supportive lending, it's not just the amount. It's about the tenure of the amount also. And also it's about the cost. And also it's about the collateral arrangement that goes along with it. In the agribusiness, the investment in that area may take roughly 2 years to mature. But sometimes in the banking sector in Ghana, you will not find a loan with a maturity of even, let's say, 1 year. Not long ago in this country, the average maturity of lending in Ghana was just around 12 months. That kind of lending cannot support agribusiness. It can only support import, where they import finished product within 6 months or so, they've reversed the transaction. And that is why the banks, it's easier for them to lend to those businesses than agriculture and agribusiness. We need to correct that. Again, apart from the private sector lending, government-owned lending to agriculture and agribusiness has not been impressive. Okay, so if you look at what Ghana signed onto in terms of the comprehensive agricultural program development, which says that a minimum of 10% budgetary allocation should be made to that sector, which will guarantee a minimum growth of 6%. We have averaged just less than 4% over the years. And this is not encouraging. What are my recommendations? We need to scale up agricultural spending, not as a favor, but as a necessity, and link that to agribusiness. We need to open up the entire sector and need value chain to Ghanaians and the private sector. The private sector cannot go into agribusiness to do us a favor. They are not NGOs. So if they see a better opportunity in industry or in the oil sector, why would they lend to agriculture as a favor? Because they have taken deposits from people and they cannot use their money to do anybody a favor. We must package that sector to make it a bit more attractive. And government must scale up investment in that area as a signal effect in order to encourage the private sector to plug in. This is the way to go. And we have seen that all over the world. We have seen the role that government spending plays in private sector growth opportunities. Even in the ICT sector, in the US, in Japan, you can understand the role of the state in influencing private sector activity. If you look at the pressure being brought to bear on UK in terms of the participation of Huawei in the 5G, you see the role of government, even US government, their influence on UK and all of that. So it means that government has a very direct and demonstrable role to play in scaling up the opportunities in agribusiness that can also offer a signal effect for private sector to feed in. To this extent, it is only user-friendly to talk about setting up an agriculture sector investment fund with private sector involvement. We have to be deliberate about that, and I'll demonstrate how that can be done. We need to deepen and quicken legal, regulatory, and administrative reforms in the public sector to improve efficiency and service to the private sector, particularly in the agribusiness value chain. A very corrupt public sector represents higher costs in the interaction between the private sector and the public sector, and we need to do away with it. The bureaucracies and all of that represent higher productive cost base to doing business in this country. We need to address that. We need to transform agriculture and open up agribusiness opportunity for Ghanaians and beyond. Because the understanding is that more 2/3 of non-oil manufacturing actually depends on agricultural products. So that's the way to go. Banks can complement the traditional collateralization of loan with innovative forms and all of that. So it's important that banks also play their role. And this is very, very important, particularly with appropriate risk management mechanisms to mitigate the risk inherent in that particular sector to make finance work for the poor. One of the things we can do, it may not be that popular, but sometimes in crisis moments, it's not every decision that must be popular in order for it to work. We must understand the impact of COVID-19 because in crisis moments, some people gain whilst others also lose. So if you look at what is happening right now, we need to have a better understanding of the impact of COVID-19. Who are those who have gained from the crisis? And a good example would be the ICT. As people have developed coping strategies, now we do webinars, we do online lectures, online work-based environment, telework environment, and all of that. The oxygen for that is data. So the traffic then is in the doorsteps of the ICT companies. So the expectation is that their profit will grow this year. To that extent, it should be possible for us to impose a minimum windfall tax on the big gainers from COVID-19 and use it to finance agriculture and agribusiness. In other words, those who gain from the pandemic, not that they cause it, must be able to put a lot more on the table in order to aid the recovery. Public-private partnerships must also be involved in this arrangement. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm very grateful. God bless you.
Thank you very much for that insightful presentation on how we can scale up financing in the agribusiness sector and how policy shift can also change the narrative for the betterment of the sector. We are most grateful. So we'll take the second speaker, then we move straight away into our Q&A, then the second session can start. So Mr. Andy Ahianku, if you are here, please can you take over? And you have 20 minutes to do the presentation. And please be checking your private networks because I'll be alerting you with the time as well so that we can keep to time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kojo, and thank you, Prof, for the insightful presentation. In fact, in a typical Ghanaian parlance, I would have said Prof has done an excellent job, and so let's just pack and go home. However, I need to just add some few insights to what Prof has already said. I'm going to be, in the next 20 minutes, sharing some insights or strategies for harnessing pandemic-triggered opportunities for the agri sector. Unfortunately, I'm working from home. There is some construction work going on in my flat, so pardon the background noise. According to the FAO, funding and investment opportunities are scarce and low in sub-Saharan Africa, and Ghana is no exception. Prof just mentioned, and data supports that the sector attracts less than 10% credit in spite of the immense GDP contribution and the employment effect that Professor Bockwin spoke about a while ago. In a Dalberg and KFW 2018 report, it revealed that the funding gap for agriculture in Africa alone is $100 billion. So if that were the case, then why is the picture that has been painted by Prof, which everybody around the table agrees to, why is it that agri is not attracting the needed support? And Prof mentioned that it is as a result of the perceived risk. But I will go a step further to add that the risk is not only perceived, but it is real. In a 2018 research by the Kenya Bankers Association, they argued that the risk-adjusted return on lending to agriculture is not profitable. Again, in another research by my organization, which is Aceli Africa and Dalberg over a 2-year period, it came to light that lending to agri, especially the agricultural SMEs, is 2 times as risky as compared to other sectors in East Africa. And on a portfolio basis, financial institutions make an average of a 4 to 5% loss on lending to agricultural SMEs. This has been attributed largely because Either the banks do not have the capacity to appreciate and lend profitably to the agri-SMEs, or the private sector hasn't got a capacity to be able to lend profitably to this sector. And this is supported by a report recently published by FAO in June 2020. Given this background, that banks are risk averse in spite of the opportunities, etc., COVID-19 and other related pandemics have worsened the already bad situation. So now there's decrease in confidence amongst lenders. Credit opportunities to agri-SMEs is limited. The resultant effect of all this is there's reduced food security. Farmers did not get input on time as a result of movements and restrictions put around Africa and Ghana for that matter. Labor was not available, demand for crops dwindled, and generally output for agriculture declined. But that is not all. The pandemic has also brought about opportunities. It has taught us that we can do things in a different way, in a different manner, and in a different form. The pandemic is telling the agri-food industry to have a rethink. In other words, to create opportunities for economic, social, and sustainable growth. What are some of these opportunities? From the financial perspective, or from the financial institution perspective, the pandemic has taught the banks that they can collaborate and indeed work better in partnership with telcos and other agri-tech entities, the likes of AgroCenter, MFarmPay, and our own Isoko. So going forward, it should be possible for banks to support agricultural entities and agricultural SMEs, but not necessarily visiting those entities. You could rely on partnership with telcos and technology-driven entities. What this means then is it is going to lower the cost to serve the agricultural entities and to some extent bring down interest rate, which is one of the things that Prof alluded to. Beyond collaboration, especially in East Africa, one of the things that came in the wake of the pandemic was the cancellation of orders, especially export-related orders in the coffee, tea, and largely the floriculture value chains. So in Kenya, where cat flour is big business, most of these orders were either directed to the European market and the Far East. But when Corona came, all this went down. The export sector suffered heavily, but the food subsector gained. So whereas export was down, food crops or local production went up. So as a bank or any financial institution should be thinking about tweaking its model. It is no longer sexy, to use the, maybe for want of a better word, it is no longer appropriate to rely on only financing export and cash crops. If you do that, you will be found wanting in the day of a pandemic. So banks should be tweaking their model now and be supporting food crops, supporting production, because although the export sector was impacted and cut, food crops like cereals gained because people have to eat, people have to feed. Another area that can be harnessed is building functional linkages for agri-SMEs. Most agri-SMEs, especially in Ghana, have relied on value chain financing. That is getting input credit from their suppliers, they produce, and then they also pass on to an off-taker. Most of these relationships largely have been based on trust. But in the wake of the pandemic, when people are hungry, when there is liquidity challenge, the resultant effect was there was breakdown in trust. Most of the SMEs and smallholder farmers took to side selling. What this has taught us is to strengthen the linkage along the value chain and build a sustainable relationship by formalizing some of these relationships, building contracts in the relationships, and ensuring that each party or each actor along the value chain plays to the game to encourage the smallholder to pass on its produce along the chain till it gets to the final consumer. Another area that is worth considering is what came about because of the lockdown. When there was a lockdown, it became clear that although agri was one of the essential areas, there wasn't a clear understanding of what to do and what not to do. So transportation was impacted. I have a small farm back home. It took me about a week to get my seeds. What this means is it impacts on your production calendar. But that is not all. The COVID-19 has taught us that we can do business in a different way. So one of the opportunities that the COVID-19 has brought about is the growth in e-commerce and digital technology. So if you are an agri-SME, one of the things you should be thinking through now, or the areas you should be focusing on, is how can I use, for example, social media to get my produce from my warehouse to the final consumer. We've seen the likes of Uber develop Uber Eats. So you can be in the comfort of your home and order for food. I think these are opportunities that agri-SMEs should also be considering. Beyond that, you can, if you are on a large scale, tap into the likes of FedEx and DHL to be able to move your produce from your farm gate to the off-taker. Again, one thing that COVID-19 has brought about is import substitution. So for countries like Ghana that will import some produce at a high cost, with the lockdown and the impact of COVID-19, what that meant is either the produce delayed or you didn't get it at all. What does that mean for a local producer? It opens up opportunity for local farmers, local producers, agri-SMEs in Ghana to be able to produce and produce more. That is not all. I take an example of what happened in Tanzania. In Tanzania, they were importing palm oil. However, when COVID-19 came about and borders were locked, what did they do? They started to substitute the palm oil with sunflower oil. So in Ghana, if we are impacted because we cannot get some produce, then I submit that it is an opportunity for local producers to step up to be able to do this and do it profitably. But in doing this, they will need capital. And this is where financial institutions and commercial banks must step up to the plate to be able to support and do more. Finally, we all agree around the table, and I have mentioned earlier, that as a result of COVID-19, the already bad situation around credit has been worsened because farmers lost contracts, there was lack of confidence in the market, and so it led to credit tightening. When there is credit tightening, I agree with Professor Bobby that government must step up to the plate and bolster commercial banks improve lending to the agri sector. So government must do more by bringing about more risk sharing mechanisms. Prof has already spoken about it, and I agree that there must be a relax to the regulatory requirements. I submit humbly that the current regulatory requirements, and this is not our Ghana alone, generally in sub-Saharan Africa, is inimical to agricultural finance and agricultural growth. So long as banks continue to depend on short-term funds, it will be difficult to pass on these short-term funds to agriculture. Agriculture needs long-term funds and at a lower cost, and Prof has spoken about that. I think government must also go a step further to encourage the adoption of fintech models to be able to democratize financing channels so that smallholder farmers in Zuarungu, in Tumu, Binduri, and Garu Timpani can be able to access financing through these channels, although the bank may not have a physical presence there. And I know the government of Ghana has done some direct interventions uh, in the sector and in agri, but in a pandemic situation, government needs to go a bit further and do more, like reducing tax for agricultural SMEs, reducing tax for individuals in the economy, in addition to what they have done so far. Agri SMEs are vital to agricultural markets. They facilitate trade, they create employment, and they enable food security. We therefore, as a country, must invest in maintaining their linkage, increase their liquidity, and support their agility to enable them sustain shocks from pandemics like COVID-19. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So thank you very much, Mr. Anku. Uh, we've gotten to a point where we have to be more interactive. So I would like to plead, if you have a question before I start reading the two questions I have taken note of. Those questions are directly meant for Professor Bocking. But if you have a question, please unmute your microphone and ask the questions directly so that you can have answers.
Good morning. My name is Isaac Aqua. Thank you very much for this. It was very informative and very interesting. You mentioned agri-tech solutions. I know a lot of startups and tech startups are looking to create different solutions, but how would you say it's best rolled out? Like with both the stakeholders, which tend to be non-technical, like the farmers at hand, and they can't also work in a bubble, so they have to work with different stakeholders, whether it's input providers, logistics, local government. How best can tech entrepreneurs partner with these existing players to roll out their tech?
My name is Stephen Iwu. I represent Farrelly and Michel, global consultants in Sub-Saharan Africa, based in the Accra office of the company. The presentations are very insightful. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks to Prof. I had the privilege to listen to their presentations. My submission is about how we can bring in the private equity investors into this whole game of agribusiness development in Sub-Saharan Africa. Because I'm looking at the situation where, depending on the level of a business development in terms of finance needs, taking a loan of with an interest rate of, let's say, about 25% per annum or 30% per annum, depending on the quantum of investment needed, some businesses can be able to stand that. But then for those at the end, getting to the top end of the value chain, you agree with me that most of them need huge investments, and these guys would sometimes, be open to private equity investment which comes in with some kind of level of briefing space where the businesses can take huge loans or huge investments, and which also comes with flexible terms of payment and flexible interest sometimes. So I'm thinking that we should be able to find ways and means to bring in the private equity segment of agribusiness financing into the general broader agricultural value chain development in sub-Saharan Africa. How can we integrate that segment into this space? That is my question.
Please, I just have a question. Actually, this is directed to Prof. Just a question that was came up earlier on in the discussion. You mentioned that during this COVID-19 period, there are some companies or some sectors that are making it and some that are not making it. And I think there was an allusion made that those who are doing well in this pandemic should be subsidizing those companies who are suffering, I would say, in this pandemic. And I just wanted to understand this because clearly those companies who are doing well are doing something to add value to the society, I guess, and the institutions out there who need their service, like we've spoken about digitization and things like this. But why should those who are innovative subsidize those who are less innovative to some extent, or to some extent maybe stuck in the old way of doing things? So I just wanted a bit of insight on that, please.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll pause here for the speaker to respond to the questions. So I think, Andy, if you can respond to the first three sets of questions.
Yeah, thank you, Kwame, Steve, and Newton. So let me start first with Kwame's point. I think it was directed at Prof, but I'll attempt an answer. I think what Prof said to Kwame Bekwin was some sectors have benefited from the COVID-19. They are not the cause, but the very nature of the pandemic is such that they had a windfall. So he mentioned telcos because we are using data and so we are paying more, etc. Typically, the ICT sector will have a windfall and their bottom line will be good this year. So Prof was suggesting that if that were the case, it would just be fair for sectors who have benefited more than they had anticipated to sort of come to the party and pay something more in the form of a windfall tax, just to push in the general economy. And I know sometime, was it 2014 to 2016, thereabout, some organizations, and I know the time that I was with Barclays Bank, the banks were asked to pay some windfall tax as a way of shoring up the economy. So that was the suggestion of Prof. And to Steve, yes, I agree that private equity is needed on the table. In a research conducted by the FAO and the United Nations agency that looks after the least developed countries, the UNCDF, they alluded that it is 5 times better to give investment or for investment to go along with technical assistance than to just give investment. Why am I saying this? For private equity to reach the agri sector or agricultural SMEs, it is important that there must be a technical assistance component to the investment. And on this note, I am calling on business advisory service providers to be able to educate the agri and SMEs to know what financing that will be needed depending on the cycle of growth. Businesses go through cycles. You start as a startup, grow, you mature, and you decline. So depending on where you are on the business value chain, for want of a better word, you need to understand and approach the right financier. Commercial banks are not your right partner when you are a startup. In fact, you will be fortunate to get funding from a commercial bank if you are a startup. And there are reasons for it. As soon as money leaves the vault of a commercial bank, the interest meter begins to kick. But you and I agree around here that every business has a life on its own. When you start, you will struggle, you will make mistakes here and there. If you take funds, that comes with interest. Can you imagine what will happen if after 2 years the business fails and you have to start? So, as a startup, my advice to you will be use your own funds, go to family and friends. From there on, move to business angels, consider venture capital. Then, in year three, you can consider commercial banks, private equity, development finance institutions, etc., etc. As you grow and you make more money and you learn the tricks of your trade. Now to Newton, who wanted to know what should the agri-techs be doing in order to partner or work with, for example, commercial banks. I agree with you that yes, sometimes the agri-techs tend to live in the world of their own. But that is why, as an entrepreneur in the agri world, you must have a commercial acumen. It is not enough to develop or design your product, but you must go to market with your product. And thank God, COVID-19 has taught the commercial banks and indeed the financial institutions that having brick and mortar is not enough. You need technology. So my advice would be all the techpreneurs, all the agri-tech companies, this is the time to seek opportunity with a business head of any commercial bank. Develop your product, put it, package it well, probably get somebody who can support you in marketing it, come along with you, and do a presentation to the commercial bank. Sell the benefit of the product and not necessarily the features. Uh, where I work now, at Selling Africa, we facilitate lending to agricultural SMEs. And I receive presentations and discussions from agencies. A while ago, I had a chat with an agency called Cropfin in India, who are selling a crop insurance solution. Banks can sit in their office and be able to know what is happening on the farm of their agri SME. That is not all. There is one in the aqua sector called aquanetics that tells you the feed conversion ratio, how the animals are behaving. It can even give you the number of times that the fishes have been fed in a cage. So if I am a banker, for example, and I get my client to have this connected to his cage, I don't have to go out. But how will a bank know if this technology is available? You only know if you come and you market this solution to the bank. So go out, speak to the banks, speak to the commercial institutions to get their buy-in. It is necessary now, and this is the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yaku. Prof, if we are still around, there are a couple of questions that I took note for you. Considering the agriculture and agribusiness value chain, which areas should we prioritize for funding in the COVID-19 era?
Okay, thank you very much. I think Andrew has done a good job for me, and I think the organizers did very well by picking the right speakers. So I don't. It's not like it's like I feel like not adding anything to what Andrew has said. If you are not careful, it will amount to subtraction. Um, so that's very insightful. I think, like Andrew has said, um, we need to understand the nature of the agribusiness. We need to understand the growth stage where we find ourselves, and then seek the type of financing that would be appropriate. So I agree that it's not everyone who can wake up and just go to a bank, because banks don't offer patient capital. At the introductory stage, what you need is patient capital. And I think patient capital is not available from the banks. So to that extent, we need to understand that. Then again, on the specific question of the entire value chain, I think because if you look at the investment value I mentioned, over $50 billion is within the entire value chain. So when you truncate one sector, it doesn't help you to get the entire gain in terms of the value chain. That is what we should be looking at. So as a starter, depending on business strengths, weaknesses, and all of that, they can look at whether they want to operate in the production, in the processing, the marketing or distribution or transportation end of the value chain. They are all there, or from the input dimension. So that will be dependent on the individual businesses and where they want to operate. I will give you just one example because I don't want us to. I'm trying to be very careful. We don't commit the same sin we committed in the cocoa sector. So if you look at the cocoa sector, where Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire produce more than 60% of the global inputs, and we get less than $10 billion. Meanwhile, the entire value chain in the cocoa sector is $106 billion. And we get very, very small. It's because we participate at the lower end of the value chain where we don't command greater margins or margins at all. So we should be looking at the entire value chain. And when I say that this represents low-hanging fruit, in terms of the processing and the value addition, it's not that great. And sometimes it doesn't require huge investment as a start-off. So if you look at it across the entire value chain, you realize that it is within reach. But it's very difficult to win as an individual. And it's very difficult to pull the individual financing together. And that is why the group-based lending and the risk pooling becomes particularly important. And Andrew talked about something that I think in our part of the world we have not harnessed that much to its fullest potential, which has to do with angel investors. And how do we get them on board? And which we can link also to venture capital fund. Okay, so sometimes you realize that some of these things that have a bit of state oversight and all of that have not been that efficient in actually reaching out to those who are actually doing the real business, who have got a sound business model that can survive on their own. We need to do away with that so that we can make sure that the funding that we put together actually reaches the agribusiness operators so that the funding reaches the people. But the other issue is that, which I agree with Andrew, we need to tell the story. We need to get professionals to tell the story. And we need to engage better and highlight the opportunities that are in there. So we need to move beyond just our own intra kind of knowledge, skill, or capacity building and begin to also engage, identify the partners who can help and begin to be a bit aggressive about that. So who are the angel investors? How do we locate them? Who are the development finance institutions? How do we get them on board? For instance, the African Development Bank, the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development, and the various institutions. Let's look at the packages that they have. Let's engage. Let's look at how do we make it work for the ordinary African, the ordinary Ghanaian. And then also, again, financing must come along with the technical capacity building, which Andrew talked about, which I agree. So sometimes it's just about the packaging. And sometimes even a good idea, when said in the right way, makes more impact. So we need to do that. So to that extent, I think we need to work together with people who are in private sector players in scaling up in terms of the professional packaging and all of that, in telling our story and highlighting the opportunities. To that extent, how do we network and understand all the protocols, particularly within the African continental free trade, so we can take advantage of that, and so that Africa can talk among itself, we can talk among ourselves and discuss the risk, the opportunities. How do we manage it? With that one, I think we can make much progress. Let's understand it. Within even the chamber, the agribusiness chamber, that is very difficult to survive alone. So let's look at getting along with a lot of people and seeking the common good. That way, it will be easier and sharing the information and best practices. But we also know that because of COVID-19, we have talked about that even before COVID-19 came in terms of the fourth industrial revolution and the role of ICT and digitization. So we should not see digitization as a standalone sector. Because digitization of ICT is diffused across all the sectors now. So we can talk about ICT in agriculture, ICT in agribusiness, even in sharing market information and all of that. It can be done through simple phones, message here and there. And so that information from the farmer, let's say in Narugu or so, can easily reach agriculture extension officers, perhaps in the urban and peri-urban areas, so that help can reach them quite quickly. We need to do that. So we need to understand the entire value chain and then make sure that we eliminate all the bottlenecks along that. With this, I believe that we can make progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The next set of questions with the extensive response, you have directly and indirectly responded to those questions, so I won't ask them. But there's one here that's quite distinct. It's very specific. The questions read: do we have institutions supporting irrigation facilities? Are there any supporting facilities for irrigation projects? I think this question, Andy, if you can just respond to the question to the participant.
Thank you, Kojo. The authorized agency in Ghana that deals with irrigation is the Irrigation Development Authority, which is an agency under the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. I haven't seen their balance sheet, but I think Prof will agree with me that they are one of the sectors that are woefully underfunded. That is why we have a lot of wastage around the Apipe irrigation project. We are not getting the value that we should get from rice. The Pualugu one has been recently sort of revitalized, so that is good news. But what we need now, beyond the huge irrigation projects, which in themselves have environmental challenges, and the World Bank and major DFIs shy away from such projects, is to do village level dams, or even go the way of precision irrigation, where you just lay pipes and the crop gets the right amount of water and nutrients. In that stead, I am sure that most commercial banks will support financing that, except that probably at a small scale level, attracting the right financing would be difficult. But the only authority in Ghana now for irrigation is the IDA, and they are under MOFA. Thank you.
So I think the next level that we can also do is to also begin to assess those state institutions and their effectiveness in providing the service for which they were set up. And this can be done and so as a way of also doing advocacy for them. Because the understanding is that sometimes because they are government institutions, they may not be able to talk. But I think we need to understand the capacity deficits which they were supposed to fill and whether they are doing that very, very well. We need to be able to develop benchmarks for assessing performance. Okay, so we just can't leave state institutions to just draw salary and go and sleep. And annually just say, this is not enough, this is that, and all of that. So I think we need to do that. And then we need to see how we can link ordinary farmers, small farmer holders, and all of them to these state institutions in a way that they profit from. Sometimes it can just be just the knowledge, just the information, and all of that. We need to do that. So once we do that, and then we need to scale up. And I think as a country, we need to have a clear strategy of growing our SMEs, from some of them from micro to small to medium to multinational to global giants. We must be intentional about that. We must be intentional about that. And government must use its spending power to drive that. And Africa must use its combined spending power to drive that. Because the understanding is that we can go far when we travel together. And the earlier Africa recognizes this, the better. Because in terms, if you look at inter-regional trade, or intra-regional trade in Africa, you realize that we trade more in value-added goods than trade between Africa and the rest of the world. And the world thrives on margins. The world today thrives on margins. So we cannot specialize on just producing primary products. And that is why agribusiness is fundamental, particularly in terms of value addition, because it's the value addition that makes the difference. We can embrace technology in order to do this value addition. And the reason this is also helpful is that I'm sure by the time we are done today, some opportunities will be connected. Some people will establish contacts and all of that. Maybe the next subsequent ones, we should be able to do some kind of evaluation and see what progress we have made and develop budget tracker tools that we can use to measure the progress across the entire value chain. We need to be intentional about that. Then we can highlight this to policymakers, to stakeholders, that these are the gaps. We could have done this. This is where we were, and all of that. We need that. When we're able to get that evidence, I believe that we can use that to engage our politicians. But let me submit the moral hazard here. The average politician is not comfortable to put money in the sectors where they themselves are not big players. And if you look at agriculture and agribusiness, politicians are hardly known in those areas. So if you don't push them, budgetary allocation to those sectors will always be dwarfed. They will be more comfortable to put money in the areas where their party financiers draw their livelihood from and their strength from. So we need to engage with hardcore data, with the empirical data. And if we're able to understand the entire value chain and identify the gaps, the strengths and the weaknesses, we can use that to engage. And annually, we can assess ourselves and see the progress that we are making. Thank you.
Yeah, briefly. Yeah, as you are aware, the government is still rolling out this ready for food and jobs. And then within the next few weeks, they will be rolling out the weekly subsector component of the ready for food. That one, the government is looking at about 10,000 pigs to be made ready for breeding. So you can pigs, they multiply very fast. In 6 months' time, you can multiply that by 5. My question is, we don't have the processing facilities in Ghana. Maybe the politicians, they are taking right by asking them to multiply pigs. But what about the processing? What about the marketing? So very soon we'll be having gluts. My humble appeal is, as I speak now, I have been able to do meat processing, but I have done everything as I could. I'm sure Prof is listening. He says sometimes you have to do an analysis and see on feedbacks. I have been struggling to get these food process, the meat processing equipment. I'm surrounded so many big farmers. If I get those equipment, I'll be able to process feed. And I think the same government can help to enter the continental African trade and then create more employment. But I can bet you within the next 6 months, the number of pigs that will be available in Ghana, it will surprise you. And my question is, how can we impress on private people as well as the government to make available these meat processing, which will in a long way create employment? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Godfrey. We'll take your questions up. Please, if you are on any of our platform, you have any of our contact, let's link up after the conference. We'll take it up, and the chamber will find a way to help you out, connect with the right people to assist you mitigate that challenge. With respect to our sections, we want to zoom into the next section. But before we go, there are 2 things. Hello. Because of our time, we can't take questions again. We'll respond to all the questions later on, but not now. Let's finish with the two other speakers. Two of the other speakers, other pressing engagement after 1 hour. There's a message here that I think if there's anybody from GIZ, I think I can see Christoph. We need to clear this air. The person said, please, there is a WhatsApp group in Ghana claiming to be spearheading a GIZ COVID-19 relief program for agribusiness owners. They are asking for company details and signing agreement with them before you receive 2,500 euros. How true is this? Is there anyone here from GIZ to speak to this? Well, I have not seen this, but from what you are narrating, it smacks of a scam. So if Christoph can speak to this and clear the air for us, or anybody from GIZ.
Yeah, good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Christoph.
If I got you right, you're talking about a WhatsApp group regarding COVID-19
Relief Fund.
Relief Fund. No, I have never heard of that. So I would be cautious, very cautious regarding that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I suspected that much. So without much ado, I would like us to move straight into the second section. But there's also another comment here. Let me read it quickly to us. It said, we are a company located in Germany carrying out businesses in precision agriculture using satellite imagery worldwide. We are open to exchange ideas, support, and work together. Please do not hesitate to write to us with an email. Before I leave, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to join and wish you all the best. And so those of you who are interested in precision agriculture using satellite image technology, we'll link up with them. So if you need further details, contact with the chamber and we'll be able to connect you to these guys who are looking for partners to collaborate with in Ghana. Thank you very much. We'd like to call on the next speaker, Mr. Fectis Miller, who is the Agribusiness Governance Advisor at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, to speak to us on one of the aspects of the theme for today. Mr. Miller, if we're here, please can you take the floor? And you have 20 minutes. Please be brief to the point so that we'll be able to finish on time. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Anthony, the Business Chamber, and all other interested parties for having me be a part of this significant event. I just want to say, Anthony, I'm very impressed with your efforts, and you've been trying to lead the Chamber into the right directions, posting lots of helpful information and keeping a lot of people up to date. And it's really a great service that you're providing. And so thank you very much for that. I want to begin by kind of setting the stage a bit. As you can probably hear from my accent, I'm an American, and I've been in Africa for 25 years doing this work, but not just in Ghana, not just in West Africa, but also in Southern Africa and in East Africa and Central. So I've been a part of really impacting growth for a lot of companies in Southern Africa, East Africa, and now back in West Africa. Last time I was in West Africa was in 94, 95, working in Nigeria. So getting into the situational analysis of COVID-19 and the impact that this is having, I'm going to try and keep it a bit more interactive because, you know, a lot of us have gone through the data. We have been able to diagnose the problem really well, which is something great we can all talk about, but we really haven't looked at comprehensive solutions that can come together. And so I imagine many of us have looked at solutions, but the reality is that solutions are really hard to come by, and then implementing them takes on another taint altogether. So I'm going to try and tell you what I'm doing as part of the Tony Blair Institute and what I'm doing in Ghana, and just give you kind of an overview. So I joined TBI a year ago working in Ghana, and I work closely with the Ministry of Food and Agriculture in an advisory capacity, looking at strategic value chains and working with the donor community, all the donors in Ghana that are contributing to Ghana's agricultural prowess. So I try and do several things. Let me tell you a little bit about TBI. TBI does not, unlike other donor agencies, TBI does not provide project funding to say provide technical assistance, a massive project like AID does to say cashew or to fruit and vegetable crops and the rest of it. What TBI does is provide technical specialists, and there are very few of us. I'm one of a few in agriculture that really are focused on providing value by working with the donor community, working with the private sector, and bringing in investment. So that's what we do. But I go the extra distance. I want to tell you, I go the extra distance beyond what is required because I don't take on anything I can't make a success. So I want to be very clear with everybody about the things that I'm looking at trying to have an impact on. So I partner with a lot of the donor agencies and private investors and to position Ghana and to position markets and to position value chains into those areas that I find are really have high growth prospects. And I know many people talk low-hanging fruit, but sometimes it just takes a bit more than that. And but I do try and look at the low-hanging fruit. With respect to the previous speakers, thank you both very much for your insightful presentations. They're very helpful. So that's the reason why I won't go into too much of the statistics and things like that right now, unless you really want me to do that. But I want to just tell you a little bit about the things I'm focused on. So I want to express that with AFCFTA, what this does is create a unique opportunity for Ghana, unlike anything I've seen in the history of working in agricultural development for a long time. This is a unique and desired opportunity and positioning for Ghana to really be a regional juggernaut in the region, to do amazing work in the region, and to be a center in a number of different ways. So I'm hoping that we can see more develop as a result of this, because COVID-19 has presented, yes, there are winners and losers, but I'm really, since I've been a part of what's going on and providing technical advisory under COVID-19, what's going on, I've attracted investment even in this environment into Ghana. And I'm hoping to implement this once things open up so that I can execute this investment into Ghana. And I'm going to come back to that, but I just want to touch upon a couple of strategic things. So one thing that is very important for investment, and an area that I think for those that are seeking financing, seeking investment into your respective business areas, the Agribusiness Deal Room. AGRA is very active in building the Agribusiness Deal Room. The Agribusiness Deal Room is scheduled to take place in September, I believe it is. And the exact date and details I'll pass on to you, or please stay in touch with me, please stay in touch with Anthony, I'm sure he has this information. This will be a virtual deal room. It took place last year in Accra, and we put together the platform for MOFA, for those strategic areas that MOFA feels are germane for investment and want to have investment into Ghana. So we did that last year. Now it's going, because of COVID-19, we have a virtual deal room that we're going to be pursuing. And we're coordinating with AGRA to present this and those priority projects that we feel will be instrumental for where Ghana wants to go, and the types of, either be it large foreign direct investment or if it's SME oriented investment. I'm particularly interested in the SME framework because in every part of the world that I've worked and also studied in Southeast Asia and the rest of it, it usually starts from small and medium enterprises, not some big stick approach to transform an entire country. So I want to be very clear about that because that's a very, very different thing. A lot of people think, oh, the big stick approach is going to solve all of our problems. It doesn't. So I really focus on SMEs and the equipment, the total technical specialty know-how and everything around it to look at building a formula for SMEs to really grow. And I have several examples of that, but moving on. I'm focused on, tell you what I'm focused on under my arrangement with TBI. I'm particularly focused on certainly juice processing, improving everything around the production at orchard level around juice primary production, from mango to pineapple, you name it. Mango has been a real big issue because of the disease and fruit fly related issues and orchard management issues associated with it, but I think it could come around. It was mentioned earlier, I think by Prof, about the prowess of the citrus industry in the 60s and 70s in Ghana, and this is something that I think we can really bring to bear and bring it back. But moving on, I'm also focused on cashew. I'm focused on cocoa. I'm also focused on coffee and coconut. Now, I'm just going to jump to cashew. I'm sitting in South Africa because I flew here to actually source equipment as opposed to buying it from Vietnam or India, and to work with engineers that I funded many years ago in South Africa that can produce this food processing equipment, so we can have the equipment produced at least in Africa, sourced in Africa, and provided to those that are primary farmers of cashew on the continent. So I'm working with them to really pull together the equipment, full specifications and reverse engineering for what is to be done for this type of thing. One thing I want to add about cashew is the value addition around it, and the oil also, which is extremely valuable. So these are the things that I'm looking at, all the aspects around it. I also look at the market access issues, and I have market for those that are producing cashews, producing coffee, producing coconut-related products, and the rest of it. So I can open up a lot of doors in that respect, and that's what I do. So as a solution area, these are the things that I attack. And in terms of equipment and value addition, I'm looking at the mechanization angle to all of this, because really what stands to gain that would be hugely transformative in all of this, as far as I'm concerned, is the equipment angle. And everybody always wants to run to China, but I know that there are sources for used equipment, sources for new equipment, and engineering specialists that can produce the spares and necessary stuff that can keep the operations going. So I work with companies on their design, for their layout, for their factory operations, for their total compliance, their packaging, their labeling, their barcodes, because different barcodes required in different areas, their phytosanitary. So I do the certification processing with companies from ISO 22000 to HACCP to Global Gap and BRC. So these types of things is really what's going to move Ghana to the next level and what needs to be done. And I think it's a growth area. I'm going to come back to a series of growth areas, but I just want to tell you the things that I'm busy with first. So, and these are what I'm positioning for the Agribusiness Deal Room coming up in September. And I think if other people have other areas that they want to position, then please let's try and coordinate so we can have a targeted approach, utilizing AGRA, utilizing my resources with TBI and the donor community to represent the Agribusiness Deal Room for what Ghana seeks to have, seeks to generate interest in with angel investors and the like. So because it's a very good platform for attracting that. So I wanted to jump to phytosanitary compliance. Ghana was rejected not long ago because of its phytosanitary related issues of not meeting that constraint. And this is an area that is hugely important, particularly in this environment. COVID-19 has a direct relationship to phytosanitary compliance. As you might have known, or might have witnessed, many abattoirs, butcheries, the rest of it, many people in these environments get sick because of blood airborne related things happening, not taking the proper precautions. There's a lot of issues around these types of environments and slaughterhouses and the rest of it. And this is something that we need to nail down now in order to be a leader in the region and for Ghana itself. So I really would like the emphasis around phytosanitary compliance to increase. And I know that there's a big effort, and there's talk about it, and I think some institutions, I forget which institution is looking at assisting and building that even greater, but the laboratory testing and issues around this needs to really be pressed upon, because even for all this 35 billion of inputs of food into the country and the rest of it, the fact of the matter is the testing for many of these goods doesn't really take place as it does in the States. It goes through, but they randomly select in the US. So can you imagine what's happening on the continent? So many people are getting inadequate food, things that have been tainted with all sorts of things, and they have no absolute clue of what's going on, and nor does the Food and Drug Administration sometimes. So we need to really look at increasing the ability of having phytosanitary testing and laboratory development really take hold so that we can be leaders. And this goes down to issues of even for restaurants, tourism, and everything else associated around it. So I'm a big proponent to that, and it's something that I focus on with companies that seek to export, but as well as meet the local demand requirement to provide healthy and hopefully organic food, because we do know that many people are using pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides excessively without really following the application of it. Rice storage. I wanted to get to rice storage. Rice, we know, and the big campaign around rice for Ghana is a tremendous success, but it's the early days of success, so there's no reason to sit on one's laurels. But I wanted to add that this particular issue for rice storage overall has presented a unique opportunity, because one, the preservation and food product related issues, as well as the value addition can be harnessed from this, is tremendous. And I'm working actively to bring in some of the leaders actually in storage technologies, and I will touch upon that in a bit once I busy with. One of the things I'm also busy with is mapping systems for rice around the country, all the different locations, to really understand where rice is produced in Ghana, how to map this out in a hub and spoke arrangement for efficiency of first of all storage, but also getting goods to market, and moving around the country, And another integral area which I am actively involved in, which I've brought in investment, is greenhouse. Greenhouse villages is part of the PFJ, Planning for Food and Jobs Stable, and I'm very active in that. Now, we know that there was an organization out of Israel brought in to create these 3 nodes around the country, and they have done their job, and I think that's really great. What's happening is that greenhouse development is meant to train the next leaders and next youth leaders in understanding greenhouse technology to be deployed essentially and offer their skills and services to the country at large. One thing that I've done that I think will have a huge impact around greenhouse villages, and particularly greenhouses overall, is I provided a turnkey, cost-efficient methodology for not only horticultural production, but also for fish production around aquaponics. So covering fruit, vegetables, and fish combined in a 300 square meter turnkeyed facility. This is an area that I've introduced. I have an investment. I have investors that I brought in from the States, and I'm looking at guiding this particular project to make it a huge success. It is a fully climate-controlled operation, which doesn't exist too much in Ghana, because most people don't put that type of investment into climate-controlled facilities. So this particular investment will be, I think, will have a huge impetus. First of all, certainly in fish production, but also it will be able to produce roughly 25 megatons of fruit and vegetables per annum, and roughly 5 to 6 tons of fish per annum in a 300 square meter facility. And this is just a test pilot facility that I'm hoping to introduce around the country for interested parties that would like a turnkey operation that they could invest in. Once again, it's targeted towards small and medium enterprises, and the cost of which I cannot see exceeding anywhere. I don't want to give you a wrong estimate, but I can't see it exceeding $50,000. So I'm hoping that this facility will be hugely instrumental for demonstrating the type of prowess that can be done within a small turnkey operation, covering the irrigation system, the types of beds, 3 different types of beds, the complete pumping system operations from start to finish, and everything else around it that could deliver quality organic food, fish and fruit and vegetables in one fell swoop. So I'm quite excited about that, and I have some of the market leaders in that. Now, coming back to the storage, one of the market leaders I have working with on this investment is also provides rice storage. So I think that they'll be hugely instrumental in terms of addressing climate control technology around rice storage as well. So that's a investment in the COVID-19 environment that I've put together, and I'm quite excited about it and looking forward to implementing this as things open up. Value addition. I wanted to touch upon value addition. I'm working on value addition in so many different ways in these areas. One of which is the know-how around the types of equipment that's required, the types of product that needs to be created, the phytosanitary compliance requirements that need to be created, and also finding the market for these product lines that I mentioned, which is cashew, cocoa, coffee, and coconut. So, so I'm trying to coordinate with the various associations in which to pull this together. And I will leverage donor funding where possible to make this a reality. And so these are the things that I'm active with in conjunction with MOFA. So another area in MOFA which I'm quite active with is on the M&E, on the digitization and extension officer analysis arrangements, really to understand how to best understand what's going on at Farmgate, and to also improve technical training, know-how, and shall we say, educating farmers and bringing them up on pricing, on new ways of effectively managing their small plots, and the list goes on. So that's the M&E part is an integral part of what I also spend time with MOFA and looking at the strategies for that. Mind you, I came from, I'm an IT specialist and I know engineering as well, but I used to develop applications for banking and insurance companies many years ago before I went heavily into agriculture. So I understand the requirements necessary to build the type of applications for M&E device, for handheld devices, to get the type of data set you need in order to deliver this and deploy it. Let's see. I think I covered a lot, and I'm kind of talking fast because of this 20-minute constraint. I'm coordinating with IFC as well as USAID on market access. I did mention that. Food export restrictions. Under this COVID-19 environment, we know that food export, a lot of countries have slapped food exports and said, hey, look, we're not going to sell you certain elements. I think this creates a unique opportunity to really, for one, to look at oneself and to build the technical capacity that exists in Ghana. Yes, 60% of the people are involved in agriculture. It's an amazing number, but I think there's a lot of support that Ghana doesn't realize that we need to harness. And sure, working with banks, FIs, and the rest of it, they don't understand sometimes agricultural lending. I've experienced this from my early days back in banking years ago in terms of developing product lines for banking institutions. And yes, you need to handhold them to understand this is a growth area as far as I'm concerned, because if you can provide technical assistance to financial institutions and FIs and everybody else associated to help them build a better model, then you've done a world of service for those small and medium enterprises. You can amalgamate them, and for medium and larger enterprises that have a capital constraints in this environment. So I think there's a great opportunity to provide that type of technical assistance to those financial institutions to help them understand better what to do. And in terms of building the financial models to see the revenue constraint around it, just to understand how they can make revenue and how it, over time, it can win is not terribly difficult, depending on what you produce and the value addition prospects that it also carries along. Donors are looking for leadership in this. FIs are looking for leadership in this. A lot of importers, your historical importers of note into the U.S. and others, are looking for this as well. They're looking for leadership. And I say this for a reason, because it's those that come out with comprehensive methodologies to solve some of these complexities of disrupted supply chains that will really, really do well. So delivery services and things like that, people have witnessed the growth of delivery services have been tremendous, particularly even before COVID-19, when I think of Grab in Southeast Asia. So them alone, I've watched them, I paid very close attention to them. And the growth of that has been so tremendous, and it's only going to improve. Now, marry that with the phytosanitary constraints, the care with which quality and service needs to be implemented, where Ghana historically has had some challenges in that area, is something that can be done with the right thinking behind it. So the rethinking for all the approaches for addressing this, I think, is a unique opportunities for those youth, women, and all sorts of people that will have a great interest in furthering the playing field in this. There's something to be said, though, for cash crops versus food crops and those at the bread line. And I know all of us have been talking about, and I still hear right now everybody saying, oh, a lot of people more focused on cash crops than anything else than food crops. And it does concern me for those at the bread line. So a service must be dedicated around this. Hence, the investment piece that I've brought to Ghana, and I'm bringing to Ghana with regard to this greenhouse operation to produce quality vegetables and fruit in this type of arrangement, I think serves to strengthen the bit of that, but it's only a small component. But we really need to, I think the cash crop guys will pick up, and we need to enable and strengthen them, because we can't allow that to falter. But the food crop angle also needs a lot of attention. This brings me to a particular issue I want to raise, which is around the cultural makeup of what people eat. Sometimes there are huge differences, and I've experienced this in Ethiopia and Kenya, a lot of places. We could talk coffee, but Ghana is not really a coffee drinking society. People eat cashews, yes. We can talk all sorts of around cultural related foods and things like that. Snack foods, for instance, nutritious snack foods. These are growth areas that I think could do really well for those that are focused on exporting and meeting the local demand constraint for product lines that can be sold and innovative ideas and things like that. Even on the food crop side, there are snack foods that can be created as well to meet those at the bread line and to offer product lines that could widely be offered into the Ghanaian market, unlike what has been done before. There's a bit of that taking place. I've seen it with coconut chips and things like that, but I haven't seen it with plantain, banana, even coffee, snacks out of coffee. I've seen it with a lot of different products, like from kale and the rest of it. So there are some unique ways in which to pull this together. This brings me to an area of well, how best to go about it. I think something needs to be said about faith-based organizations coordinating and working together and raising the money. Everybody says banks and local institutions don't offer this. They loathe to give, and interest rates are so high. Yes, they are exceedingly high, but I think faith-based institutions, as well as Islamic organizations and the rest of it, if people club together every month and contribute in building a fund to address some of these issues around value addition, purchases of equipment, of farm inputs, I think we'd have a huge actually surge. Now, this brings to mind corporate governance systems around managing these types of cooperatives. Some of the most successful cooperatives I've seen in doing this actually exist in churches in Kenya. Kenya is probably the leader in cooperative governance models that I've seen, from transportation to owning buildings to assisting with all sorts of agricultural input materials. They've done exceptionally well in this, and I think this is something that would work in the context of Ghana. And I know people are sometimes, I've heard people say, cooperatives don't work in Ghana, all the rest of it. But I think it has to do with the cooperative governance systems and safeguarding, giving people confidence that their money won't be stolen and everything else around it. So there's measures of trust that needs to be reestablished. And sure, I don't have an easy answer for that one, but the fact of the matter is that something needs to be said about this opportunity for raising finance, unlike what has been done before. And this is probably, even though it's a small amount and it's every month, I think these things add up. and then it becomes a bargaining tool for negotiating with the financial institutions that are willing to leverage on that money. So, it's something to think about as a potential to offer as another, shall we say, quasi blended finance model or something like that. But something that certainly should be considered. There are a few growth areas that I see, and I just wanted to just quickly run down. And again, I say storage systems. It was mentioned that people don't have refrigerators and the rest of it, but understanding storage methodologies and being able to manage that constraint to eliminate post-harvest losses is a tremendous. This is an area I think is growth. Now, getting back to irrigation and water management systems, with all the plastic waste that exists, I really would like to see the research institutes in Ghana and diasporans and everybody else involved in this process that's interested in Ghana really come together, because quite frankly, with all the plastic waste and everything else, really, I started looking years ago at creating the systems for irrigation, drip irrigation, using waste plastics and injection molding and blow molding to create the components for drip irrigation. And this can be done. It's not terribly complex, but it does require a bit of technology around it. And I think I challenge really the research institutes to get involved in this type of thing, because it's a very big growth area that will transform Ghana, let alone the continent, in addressing this issue alone. For coconut farmers, you name it, all sorts of different farming operations. I mentioned the issue around value addition, abattoirs. I think we need to improve the phytosanitary around that and really hone in on that. I touched upon the phytosanitary. Food nodes. The food nodes around the country, we need to actually ring fence them and really improve the phytosanitary compliance around these food nodes in the country for measures of efficiency, and also to create another market that people will take a great interest in coming to these informal markets because of the style of it. I've visited many informal markets around the world, and a lot of people have positioned them beautifully, such that you want to go there as opposed to going to the formal supermarkets and the rest of it to buy your goods because you offered also a better price. So these are areas in which government and private sector can coordinate together in unique public-private partnerships. Medicinals. Now, Ghana has incredible resources, unlike a lot of places I've seen. You really have everything. You have really everything at your disposal to take advantage of some very strategic areas, from fisheries to shellfish and the rest of it. Now, and when it comes to medicinals really stick out to me. When I say medicinals, I'm talking about from Achacinia to Echinacea to all sorts of different areas where I know that this business, that is a growth area that will take off in the years to come, and because of traditional tinctures and medicine that are needed within formalized medicine, it's a golden opportunity for those that want to engage in it. I mentioned snack foods, from cassava chips to all sorts of things that frankly I think is a golden opportunity, and not really, and I mean good quality products. And so, it has to be done in such a way that it's attractive. I don't like the idea of being able to see 85 or 90% of the products on the shelves in supermarkets coming from outside of Ghana. That should not happen. The same applies for when I think of, as we try and move, in this decade to move forward, there's an issue around quality management systems in all sorts of different areas, from water management and the rest of it. And I should be, many people should be able to turn on the tap and be able to drink the water freely without any disease or anything else around that. And so there are certain water purification systems that uses activated charcoal from coconut in order to eliminate these types of problem areas that exist. So anyway, Speaker, I know I'm going over time, but I just want to touch upon some of the issues that I find are growth areas and hugely important. And I say thank you for this opportunity. I could go on, but I'm just going to stop there. I have a lot to say about some of the areas that I've worked with in the past and what I'm busy with. And I'm looking forward to implementing this investment piece for this greenhouse operation, because I think it will be very demonstrable in showing people fish, fruit, and vegetable production all in one in an efficient methodology is turnkey. But and so stay tuned for that. And if anybody's interested more in that, then certainly we can cover it. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'm willing to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Miller. That was very detailed and practically and personal. Most grateful. We'd like to take our last speaker for the day, then we'll zoom into the Q&A section. So please keep your questions coming in. If you have questions that you think you may forget when you get to the last section, post the questions in the chat box. And whilst the second speaker is speaking, please mute your microphone so that we do not distract the flow of his presentations. Let's stay tuned to have the last presentation. Thank you very much. So our next speaker is Mr. Nalban Bonjaji, who is the CEO of Agribusiness Ghana Limited. Mr. Nalban, if you are here, please let's hear your presentation. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon to you all, and thanks so much for your patience. I must first of all thank the organizers, the Chamber of Agribusiness, of which I'm part. I also thank the earlier three speakers who have actually made my work very difficult, very easy actually. I'm actually wondering if there's anything to add to all that has been said already. But since I have the platform, I'll just take the opportunity to share some thoughts with you. Now, the thing about the agribusiness in itself, as Professor made mention of, is that there's a lot of opportunity within the agribusiness sector. There is also a number of challenges that some people may want to talk about. There is a lot of the time we get ourselves into certain activities and we keep wondering whether or not that is the best area for us. Now, after we have been able to identify all of these, how do we position ourselves in such a way that we can take advantage of some of these opportunities that are coming up? How do we differentiate ourselves? How do we put ourselves in there in the market to be able to trade effectively with other organizations globally? So this afternoon, I'm just going to share with you a model that I developed, which I refer to as a COVID-19 continuum. Just share some food facts, look at some considerations that one would want to have when you are putting in place strategies to be able to come out successfully after the COVID-19, and then would look at various forms of strategizing. But one thing I must say is that any organization that hitherto had no strategies would find it very difficult to be able to recover, mainly because irrespective of the fact that some of the strategies may have been thrown or put into some form of imbalance, what is happening now is that if you do not have anything that you would have formed the basis of your modus operandi, moving forward is going to be a challenge because you don't have a baseline or a platform or a foundation on which you're going to build your strategy for the next phase post-COVID. So this is the COVID-19 continuum, and what it does is that it helps me understand and appreciate what COVID-19 has brought to us and how we have actually moved on to be able to determine that, hey, this is a stage at which we have reached. Now, before COVID, we were living in a situation whereby we actually thought we were doing things the right way until the COVID event occurred. And then it shook the very foundation of our various organizational strategies and initiatives. Then we had early infections where we had very little information because very little information was coming from China. The World Health Organization had almost no information with regards to what COVID was, how it was being, the mode of transfer, how many people were getting it, which areas were actually the epicenters. And we've realized over time that the epicenters have moved. from Wuhan to Europe to the Americas, and then fortunately for us in Africa, we are not necessarily going through any mainstream of such vast numbers of infections. But looking at what is happening today in Ghana, I dare say that if we are not careful and we do not manage the way we are going about the handling of the COVID-19 cases, then we might end up just going overboard beyond what we initially thought. I'm sharing some food facts, and here we get to know that over the period, food post-harvest loss globally, as indicated by the Food and Agricultural Organization, goes over 30%. And this is a global average. In Ghana, that goes to a little over 40%. And that's mainly because when you look at the various value chains, most of them are not that well developed. And that is where some of us can actually take advantage when we are putting in place the initial business initiatives, as well as the focus markets and then the segments of the market that we want to be able to serve. Now, we'd also want to realize that 75% of the poor are in the rural areas. And the interesting thing about that, or the converse thing about that, is that out of the 75% who are in the rural areas, we also know that Agric in the rural areas would employ not less than 80% of the locals. And then when you look at Ghana as a whole, over 60% of our population are employed in Agric. And that's why it is, I found it very, very interesting that based on the information that Professor Bokpin shared with us, looking at the multiplier effects and then looking at how much value we are able to get back. Now, in terms of value, one of the things that we need to be able to understand is that value is determined by the customer. Every organization gets into business for a reason, and for whatever reason you'd want to get into business, one of the things that is key in being able to determine what strategies you put out is that every strategy that you start defining, or every idea that you have to work out to be able to get to satisfy the customer, must be based on the needs of the customer. So here you're looking at the requirements. If, for instance, I prefer yam chips, how do I want to have my yam chips? Would I want to have it frozen? Would I want to have it cooked? Would I want to have it ready? So depending on whatever you'd want to go into, value in itself may vary from customer to customer. Now, the other thing also that I want us to look at here is mainly the issues of the industry. In my personal view and from my personal experience, I think market linkage is one of the most difficult things that a lot of people within the agribusiness space face. And my reason is that when you take right from the smallholder farmer, production is not a problem because he'll produce based on how well he's able to dispose whatever is left. He would go back to subsistence if he realizes that whatever he produces goes bad. And that is why we have post-harvest losses. So a lot of us who are actually into the production phase or part of agribusiness do not produce to meet a particular market. We produce with the hope or with the belief that somebody would come by. And if that doesn't happen, we declare ourselves as having ventured into an industry or a sector that is not worth it. But in actual fact, we really didn't prepare ourselves for that. The other thing also that I realized from experience is that the soil quality over time is deteriorating, and that is across board. And that is why a lot of us have started using chemicals, which are not helping us, because based on a situation I actually witnessed in the now OT region, a woman went to an input dealer and wanted to buy chemicals. She was told that she actually bought the chemicals, went to use it, and came back to make a complaint. And the complaint she was lodging is that she used the chemicals, and it so happens that, unfortunately, her groundnuts, 3 acres of groundnuts, was turning brown. When I inquired further, I got to know that she actually used the chemicals based on the fact that she believed that it was selective. And this was because a friend of hers who used it for maize recommended that it was working very well. So you realize that a lot of us are using chemicals, be it fertilizers, be it, and when it comes to fertilizers, a lot of it is the NPK 15, 15, 15, and at some point you add ammonia and all of that. But the question is, what is happening to the soil? The soil is depleting in quality. We also have a lot of the cropping systems being, let's say, if you're planting yam, you plant yam for the next 15, 20 years, and you're still using it for yam. If you're using it for granules, you continue planting it for all that time. But that's mixed farming concept, or mixed cropping, is gradually phasing out. Now, in terms of our farming system, we're still using the cutlass and hoe. There's some form of mechanization ongoing, but it will also interest you to note that with the mechanization, you'd go onto the field and realize that a lot of the tractors and all are not operational because we don't have the skill. In those communities, they don't have the skill to be able to repair them. So what exactly, or how was the rollout being done? The penetration of technology is another area that is of interest to me, and that's mainly because yes, technology is good, and as a matter of fact, COVID-19 has actually served as a catalyst to the implementation of technology, because hitherto, a lot of us, yes, knew about having meetings online, but we wouldn't want to adopt it because we preferred meeting face to face. But the key thing now is that technology in itself could be detrimental if you do not know how to use it. And those in our smallholder farmers, majority of whom do not know how to use the smartphones, would need a lot of support. The kind of technology that we use within the agricultural space also, as you may have realized, there's a lot of tech-related entrepreneurship programs where they're able to get funding. But the question is, when you're able to develop that, who are you selling it to? And how well would they be able to use it? And that's another thing. And I must commend Isoko for having been consistent over the time with being able to provide market prices, amongst others. Now, the other part of it has got to do with infrastructure. And with infrastructure, it's difficult for a lot of us because, like was mentioned by other speakers, it's a challenge. And we don't have, for instance, cold storage. Our agri supply chain system is almost non-existent for a lot of the value chains. And as a result of that, you get into the various communities and you realize that we're still using the old method of, for instance, storing maize, old methods of storing yam. But in all of this, as have been mentioned as the industry challenges, there lies the opportunity. And for anybody who is yet to venture into the agribusiness space, I'd recommend that you look into some of these areas, because as a matter of fact, I always say that if you want to copy, you could copy with pride, but just make it better for yourself. A lot of these things have been solved in other areas and in other jurisdictions like Southeast Asia, where notably in India, for instance, I love to speak about the Amul cooperative, where they provide collection centers for milk, which are then sent into a processing unit. They produce milk, ghee, amongst others, and they are consuming it locally. So these are some of the things that we would need to take into serious consideration if we are going to be able to take advantage of it. Now, delving straight into why how we put together our strategies. Unfortunately, in this presentation, I'm not going to be able to be very specific with very particular industries, mainly because we're not talking about a particular value chain. We're looking at it in general terms. But one of the main words that has kept me going over the period is a wise man's writing, which tells me that I should put my vision and make it plain upon tables so that he that sees it can run with it. So if there's anybody who is an entrepreneur or who is into agribusiness, definitely you would have come into agribusiness for a reason. Whatever vision you have for your organization must be made known to your staff. In a consultancy, in some consulting work that I do, I realize that a lot of organizations, yes, have visions, yes, they have missions, but their staff don't live by those missions and visions. Why? Because they don't know about it. And that happens a lot in SMEs. And as a matter of fact, the organizations I'm referring to are actually, many of them are multinationals. And it is so, and as a result of that, staff or people who you work with or who we work with don't really appreciate what exactly we are doing. They don't know how their actions and inactions affect the organization's productivity and as a result of its profitability. So it is important that whatsoever vision you have for your organization as a startup, as an SME, as an organization that is in its growth stage, it is important that you enable the staff of the organization to appreciate what you are doing so that they can run with it. Otherwise, at every point in time, you'll be frustrated, and you'll be frustrated not because you do not have a very good vision, but because you don't get the buy-in of the staff who you're working with as part of it. Now, to be able to strategize, it is important that you initially break bulk. And what I mean by breaking bulk is that the agricultural industry is very huge. You would have to define or determine which aspect of the value chains and first of all, which value chain you're going to be in and the role you're going to play within the value chain. So let's take livestock breeding, for instance. When we at Agriculture and More started our livestock farm, Misha Farms in the Kwantano district, we started with piggery, and we have some goats and some cattle as well, but we're still in a growth phase. Now, what happened was that at that point in time, we hadn't decided whether or not we're going to go the whole right from breeding to table, or we hadn't determined whether we were just going to fatten and sell. We hadn't determined whether we're going to buy off people and then later process or add value to it. So as a matter of fact, whilst we were working on it, we didn't perform that well, and that's not the reason why it didn't succeed on the first try is not just based on the fact that we probably did not break bulk, but there were other factors as well. But what I'm just trying to draw your attention to is that it is important that you are able to determine which aspect or what you're going into. So if you are an agribusiness and you're going into, let's say, soya production, are you going to do the farming? Are you going to do the value addition of the processing? Are you going to do the marketing of it? Or what exactly are you going to do? And that is very key. Now, the other part of it also is that once you're able to break bulk, when you're able to take a particular value chain and you're able to determine who or what the various activities within the value chain are, then it enables you to be able to identify or analyze the various activities and determine which of them you'd want to explore for yourself. Now, once you are able to determine where you want to explore, you now define your market. And your market would determine what offerings you now need to give them. Because if you do not know the market you are going to sell to, you'd be producing just like the smallholder farmers do right now. But the key thing about a lot of us who have the opportunity of being on this is the education that we have and the exposure as well. And like I mentioned earlier on, market linkaging is one of the key areas that a lot of us have a challenge in. So if anybody is going to go into agribusiness right now, one of the things that one would want to look at is probably the value addition aspect of it. Because if we have as much as 40% of our agri-produce going waste, and we are still investing a lot more in production, then in that case, we are still going to have a lot more going waste, which hitherto we would have been able to add value to. That is not to say production is not good, because as a matter of fact, our production systems or what we use, our inputs into production, are another area that we'll take a look at as we go further. So what the image that I have shared with you there just tries to give a pictorial view of the various food systems that we have. So if it's an issue of waste management, how are you managing the waste? So an example is this: how many of us have looked into the various value chains? So for instance, if you have an abattoir and the abattoir does about 20-30 slaughters, what are some of the ways by which, for instance, one, you can use the blood? Because I know that the bones can also be used. And these are things that a lot of us most of the time do not look into. Because in Ghana, one of the things that I have come to realize over time is that we love to do the copying. We copy with pride, but we don't personalize it. So for instance, you realize that somebody has started going into the production of plantain chips. Everybody now wants to go into plantain chips. Why? Because they believe the plantain chips is lucrative. But one of the things that we fail to realize is that when we all get into it, we are crowding the market. And that's the same thing with almost everything. If you observe everything that we do, and that is one of the key challenges that we are having now. So it is important that we're able to define the areas that we are going to operate in and stay focused there. But key with strategy is that if you're going to be successful, it depends on your mindset. If you're not going to be successful, it also depends on your mindset. So if you have a positive mindset, that keeps you going. Once you are able to define your target market and you're able to determine how or the direction you're going based on your vision, then it makes it a lot easier for you to be able to forge ahead. Now, one of the things that I also take inspiration from is a quote that I want to share with you, and it says, "Invest in 7 ventures, yes, 8 ventures. You do not know what disaster may come upon the land." But the key thing about this is that I am not by this suggesting that you should go in so many investments at a particular point in time, because if you are not careful, you'll be spreading yourself very thinly. Yes, I agree that a lot of people get into agriculture having a lot of money, like in the field that what we do right now. Another thing that agriculture and more does is that we produce the Dream Meals brand of frozen yam chips. This is something that we started about 4 years ago, and we've been doing a lot of work to be able to improve the product. But you realize that whilst we were in the system, you realize that you have certain people who have financial muscle and they come in to almost like dwarf you. But if you know very well the strategy you're working with and you know your client base, who your target market is, then in that case, at least you know that there are certain fights that you cannot fight, but you can at least stay focused and keep on pushing on, and definitely you'll get your share of the market. So one of the ways by which I encourage us to be able to put together our strategies is that let's consider ways of integration. There are ways by which, so for instance, you go to, when you look at the agricultural value chains, for instance, based on the yam chips that we produce, we have had to actually backwards integrated because we also produce the yam ourselves. Now, in producing the yam, we're able to maintain a certain level of sustained supply of our yams. And also, we're able to determine the quality and quantity of the yam over time. So in the event that we need anybody to be able to supply us, we know where and how to go. And that's why we have started working on our outgrower system. So for some organizations, at this point in time of COVID-19, you might probably need to forward integrate, maybe backwards integrate, so that you are better able to control your supply chain. And that is very key. Another way to strategize is to diversify. So for instance, we are currently producing yam chips, but because of the process that we have, we are able to use it to produce other products without having to invest in equipment, amongst others. It's just like what the breweries did when they realized that they were using the ethanol for the production of their alcoholic beverages, and then they now had the opportunity of producing sanitizers. They just switched into it. Yes, it will come at a certain cost, probably at a certain inconvenience. But at the end of the day, they were able to move into those areas to take advantage of the market. And if my memory serves me right, the FDA says that as at the time they had that interview I watched, they had not less than 900 organizations or companies that were now producing sanitizers. So that also means that in diversification, it brings us opportunities as well. One of the key things that I have realized that in Ghana we seldom do is to collaborate. And I say that because when there are certain trainings that I have had to attend that were for me an opportunity to be able to meet people and then have interactions. But you get to the training site and they tell you that, apparently the people did not want to have the training in bulk. They preferred having it individually. We have individual preferences, but one of the things that collaboration does is that it enables all of us to be able to have a piece of the cake than all of us losing out on the entire cake. So, and that is why organizations such as the Chamber of Agribusiness is key, because supposing there is a need, we are able to pool resources together and then serve the need. But in a situation whereby I stand alone, it becomes a challenge. One other area that we could strategize to take advantage of is pricing. A lot of the time we seem to believe that, we are made to believe that when you're getting into a market, you should price low so that you can take advantage of the market. But that's not always the case, because if you're not careful, you'll be priced low and priced out. So once you have been able to break bulk, you identify where your kind of the kind of clients or customers you're serving. You should be able to drill down and determine what their purchasing pricing or what their purchasing power is like. So an example, what we did when we were working on the yam chips, is that we actually had to drill down to the main category, go further down into the segment of our market. So even though we have about 8 or so other companies who have come into the scene with yam chips, a lot of the time I tell my people I meet that yes, they are competitors, yes. And that's mainly because I don't know how much or how well they may have invested in certain aspects. For instance, developing the product. Because I know that for over the past 4 years, until last year, we hadn't kind of fine-tuned the product. So people the reason why the product is important is that if someone tastes our Dream Meals yam chips today, and he tastes Dream Meals yam chips tomorrow, he should be able to have the value that he is going in for. And that is, in my view, one of the reasons why Papaya, for instance, has been able to be is a market leader in their market, mainly because they've been able to sustain the taste. So if you go to Papaya today, you know that if you're buying the grilled chicken, it is grilled chicken, and this is how it has been. In the past, we have Steers, we have Mr. Biggs, we have other organizations come into the market. But what happened? They were not able to stay through to the end. So these are some of the things that we need to take a look at. And in terms of differentiation, there are quite a different ways many ways by which we can differentiate our products, be it our product offerings or by way of our service offerings. And that is one of the things and that's why, for instance, I said earlier on that copying is good. I love copying, but I copy with pride, as a matter of fact. But when you're copying, don't copy like in an exam where you copy including the person's name and index number. Go through it, take the portions of it that work for you and implement them. Don't go take it wholly and implement them, because the various parameters, the various market segments, the financial muscle that the person may have would vary from what you have. And as a result of that, your implementation may be unsuccessful. And for me, that's one of the things that I believe has made a lot of people believe that agribusiness in itself is not a viable, or it's very risky. And the main reason is that I don't know which sector or which business is not risky. But the key thing is that a lot of the time we believe that agribusiness or agriculture in itself does not require that much science. But that is a fallacy, because right from the soil type, the kind of cropping materials or the planting materials or seeds, the quantity of fertilizer, the weedicides that we use, the withdrawal period for our chemicals, when to the kind of antibiotics you use for our livestock, when not to inject them anymore, when the kind of treatments, the biosafety measures that are required. All of these things are science. But the thing about science these days is that science looks as though it is so far away from us. And that is why it is important that in being able to transfer or to translate that science into something that is usable, workable for those of us who may not necessarily have a science background. And that is where our research institutions come in. Because I can tell you that on authority, that there are tons and tons and tons and tons of research based on agriculture that are not being used, especially when it's got to do with the food area. But the other challenge is that we have a lot of areas. So, for instance, there's a Share Institute, which is in the US. We have Cocoa Research Institutes of Ghana. But if I ask how many of us have been able to go there to seek more information on how to use or add value to cocoa, majority of us haven't done it. You know, and that's one of the things that we in Ghana have a challenge, because currently, even though we have over 60% of us in being employed by Agric directly or indirectly, what is happening is that the value that is coming out of Agric is not commensurate to the number of people who are working in the industry. That means that also tells us that there is a lot of opportunity, but you have to be able to position yourself in a way to be able to take advantage of it. One of the things I'd like to mention at this point before I conclude is that we have, over the past couple of months, if not years, been working on the continental free trade area, the African continental free trade area. But one area of caution that I want to let us as agribusiness know is that it is not automatic to get the benefits of AFTA if we do not invest in agriculture. Because one of the things I have come to learn is that in South Africa, for instance, not many people then know that you can actually take cocoa in a cold form. A lot of them in South Africa, a lot of them take it as a hot beverage, but not as the cold beverage. So many people may not necessarily have known. How are we going to be able to translate whatever we have locally to be able to use it on the African stage? A lot of countries also, for instance, in Kenya, there was a post on Facebook some time ago that I put about how yams were going waste. And someone says that, hey, why not just make it into flour? But the question is, yes, a lot of us claim that there's opportunity, but we are not willing to go the extra mile to delve further into it to determine what the opportunities are. And key for us as Africans and generally in Ghana is that we have to find a way by which we can add value to our produce so that we can take advantage of the gains that come by way of foreign exchange. For me, I think it's a no-brainer. And for us, when we keep talking about the currency devaluation, currency fluctuations and all that, because in simple terms, if you are exporting more, you get more foreign currency and it works better for you. If you are importing more, then in that case, your local currency is strained. And as a result of that, you now require more of the local currency to buy the foreign goods. And one of the things that happens when you continue to do is that, just give me a minute, I'm just running out. What that does is that when you are importing, you are providing employment, gainful employment for people from the countries of export. So let us take advantage of what we have in Ghana. And I believe that together we can make Ghana great again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Naliban. That was very insightful and well thought based. We would like to invite Q&A at this time. This is our last Q&A for the day. So if you have a question, please unmute your microphone and ask the question so that the speakers can respond to your questions. And I will also plead that you make your question very specific to the two speakers. If it's Mr. Naliban asking, I'll ask to make it specific. If it's Mr. Miller asking, also make the question specific to him so that we'll be able to respond to it. So the floor is open for questions.
Hello, Mr. Moderator.
Go ahead.
Hello, can I come in?
Yes, please come in.
Look, my name is Techi. I'm actually joining you from Spain, and I'm the CEO of Euro Machinery Network in Ghana. Look, we've been into this agribusiness by supplying agriculture equipment from Spain, okay, in Ghana. And I've been working closely with the CEO of Farm Masters who is also the CEO of the chamber. What I would say is that most of the speakers made mention of very, very interesting points during this COVID period. And I'm really grateful for these opinions they have shared during this platform. In Ghana, actually, for example, he made mention of Uber. What we are doing during this period is that we are trying to work with local transport companies like VIP, Metromas, to send our products, like, for example, brush cutters, tillers, and the rest, of which is basically functioning very well. And some of them, for example, from Sunyani, where we have our base, we are able to link up in all parts of Ghana through these transport companies. Another point is that this speaker before the last speaker made mention of trying to link up with companies to supply equipment. We are willing to help in this regard. So what I would say is that I might leave my information with the chamber, so that whilst we are here and still working, because I've been working as a international business developer for companies here in Spain, where these light equipment and heavy equipment for construction are being made. And in comparison with the prices from China, I think we are getting very good product from here. And this product can really help people in Ghana. And I think it's a good opportunity for people to know that although they may be asking for product from China, they can also take the advantage of accessing products from Europe, where prices are relatively competitive, where they have spare parts, which is very important, and also people to help them service these products through our company. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There's a question here. I think, how do you secure land as a fresh graduate to start a farm? If grant for such people like no. Okay, so the question is, how does one secure land as a fresh graduate to start a farm project?
So do we answer now, or we'll take a couple?
Okay. Okay, so please unmute your mic if you have questions. Ask them so that we can have them attended to.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, mine is about networking, which all the great speakers, including our great Professor Dumping, alluded to. Now, after this, is it possible for us to have a WhatsApp or a Telegram program, which would then enable us to take time and then deliver our questions and other things, so that I'm looking at about the marketing and even how to go about the business. So first of all, the organizer, can we have a network, a platform, whether WhatsApp or Telegram? Brief answer the question, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Jam.
By the way, my name is Ambrose. I'm the CEO of the Big Farms. We process meat and also red pigs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, that is good to emphasize. Yes, we have that plan. Let me say that the chamber already have existing social media platform on WhatsApp and Telegram, but we have a special platform for this program for those of you who are looking forward for partnership and collaboration. And once we have your details, you'll be added to this platform. And those of you who registered by email, you'll be given details as to how to join the platforms after the sections. Okay. We'd like to take more questions. Those of you who have questions, please unmute your microphone and ask the questions.
Yeah, hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Please go ahead.
Yes, once again, my name is Stephen Iwa. I represent Farrelly and Michelle, Global Agribusiness Consultants. We are specialists in connecting investors to agribusinesses in sub-Saharan Africa. So anybody who is interested can connect with me later on. Right. The issue I want to contribute to is the issue about networking. When you go to Europe, you go to the Americas, you see a lot of businesses that started as networking, through networking. You see two friends coming together to build an idea into a business. And in no time becomes a giant, successful business. And it's a situation all over the place, if you agree with me. But then when you come to this part of our country, of the continent, especially Ghana, networking has not been very successful. And for me, what I see is the challenge of us as individuals and as business people sometimes not being very diligent, very open, very transparent in our dealings with our partners. And it's a situation everywhere. Sometimes you're running a project, you need the support of a partner. Possibly you maybe want to engage some services on credit, hoping that at the end of the day, you'll be able to pay or, meet obligations that you have. Your friend will come in with a good heart. Oh, let me help you to accomplish what you want to do. At the end of the day, there's always disappointment. So I feel that sometimes we need to spend a lot of time to kind of speak about the soft characteristics and then the soft capabilities of business development and factors for business success, so that we could come to the understanding that networking is a great tool that as businesses and as agribusinesses we need to take advantage of. We really want to transform agriculture in Africa and in Ghana in particular. Networking is a great tool, but then as individuals, let us be very open, let us be transparent. When we're going into partnerships, let's go in with our whole heart and trust, and openness, so that at least we would be able to always build very substantial and efficient businesses to thrive and stand the test of time, just like what happens in Europe and other places. So that is the contribution I want to make.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ria. I think, yes, you hit it right on the head. Networking is work, and so you just don't contact somebody and expect things to work out. You have to be deliberate and intentional about it. Yeah, we'll take it up from here. We'd like to take further more questions. If you have questions, unmute your mic, ask the question.
Yes, very much. This is Kwame Bequin. I'm basically representing Grow For Me, which is an agricultural fintech company. And, just going through what was just mentioned actually on networking, I took out something that Fertis Miller mentioned on collaboratives and the fact that these seem to work more efficiently in East Africa, in Kenya, than they do in Ghana. So I wanted to hear from Mr. Miller as regards to what we can do in Ghana or here in West Africa to really leverage that. It's on the same theme of networking and working as collaboratives. So I wanted to hear more advice on what we could do on that regards, please.
Okay, so that is a question to Mr. Miller. Okay. Thank you very much.
Hello? Hello? Should I answer now or wait till all of the questions?
Yes, let's take two more. Then we can address them.
Okay, yeah.
Please go ahead.
Hello?
Hello.
Good afternoon.
I'm Vincent.
I overheard Vincent. Please, can you reposition yourself?
Africa.
Okay, next person, please.
Yeah, hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Yeah, my network.
Hello?
Hello. Hello.
You can be heard. Please go ahead with your question.
Hello.
Uh, okay.
Hello.
Let's meet up.
Hello.
Take the questions.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Hello. We can hear you. Can you ask your question?
Okay. Reverend George Donko. I just joined the program. I'm new on it. It was a friend, Reverend Emmanuel, introduced me to just today, and I'm very much interested. And I have intention entering into farming with some products for export. So I want to know the assistance that this organization can give, and also how to join this your organization. That's my question.
Okay, thank you very much. Please check the chat box. We put the WhatsApp number for the chamber. We also added the email address. We've also added the chamber's website as well, so that you can reach to us. I will take it up after this section. Any other question? If you have a question,
yes, hello.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, that's
Hello?
Vincent. That's Mr. Vincent.
You can be heard. Please go ahead with your question.
All right. I'm just a new farmer, and then I'm inquiring from the Agri Chamber whether they have any support for the young farmers. For now, I myself, I just completed schooling. I want to enter into farming system. So I've started with animal farming, which is pace. And as it stands now, where I am now, I need to extend it. So I don't know whether they have support to support us so that we can enjoy the business as well. Ready?
Okay, let me clarify this. The Chamber of Agribusiness doesn't in itself provide a direct support.
Okay.
What we do is that we create the linkage, we create the platform for you to network and be able to leverage on that opportunity to engage in partnership and collaborations, and also be able to help you get in contact with investors if you need investors. So I'll plead with you, check on the chat. Check on the chat column and reach out to us on our WhatsApp platform, and also you can send us an email or you can visit our website and get in touch, and we'll take it up from there.
I'm Jamal Sisi.
Jamal, please go ahead.
Yeah, my issue here is that I'm an outgrower scheme person that we support smallholder farmers. But our challenge down here is that in Upper West, I'm from Upper West. Our challenge down here is that mostly we have, like the last speaker directly spoke about, mostly we have challenge with market. And the last time I tried talking to Mr. Anthony, that if there's a way that the chamber can come together so that we can partner to harness or to put the various smallholder farmers produce together, so they can get an off-taker for us so that we can trade better. Because actually we've been suffering, we've been struggling in a way to get a market for ourselves. And we are into soya beans and the maize. And after the soya is moving, but the maize that we have a challenge at. We want to see how best we can help us so that we can come together, put this together, and then can get a market with the chamber. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, like I said to the previous previous persons who made a request, look through the chat and reach out to us on our WhatsApp line, on our website, or using our email address, and we'll take it up from there. If there are not any more questions, I would like to invite the speakers to respond to the question. I think the first question had to do with
get to the speaker. Yeah, the last speaker said they have and they have soya. So the network, let's have that platform. I need maize to buy seriously. All right.
Hello.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah. So if you can link up with him, my information. I need the maize to buy to feed my animals. All right. Thanks.
All right, we'll get back to you. I barely heard what you said. I only heard you need maize to feed your animals. So, Mr. Miller, please, can you respond to the question that was directed to you?
The question around cooperatives and how to build and set up cooperatives, which is a function of networking and coming together. Look, I can't express it enough that really agriculture is about the culture of coming together to put food on the table. So I have to be very clear with you. The backbone, what keeps it going, is really the cooperative governance system that gives people confidence to know that the money, however small, that's clubbed together is going to be managed properly. So the cooperative governance systems, if it comes down to people having this type of, to understand what if this is what people need to really see how this can work effectively, then by golly, we need to really into a relationship of building the parameters for that cooperative governance system for Ghana as it relates to your organization. If it's a faith-based organization, fantastic, we can do that. So, and I say that because they usually have numbers, sometimes in the thousands and things like that. And if people are clubbing together, even if 500 or 800 people are clubbing together to contribute a particular amount every month, I think people will begin to see over time. And it has the right checks and balances, the right accounting, accountability in all aspects for everything that is bought and for technically how it is used. I think people will see the beneficial nature of importance of this and what it really matters to that particular grouping. Now, how to set it up? I think it would be probably a great idea. I mean, I can provide this to the chamber. The chamber can disseminate this information, whatever it takes. But I'm bullish on these types of structures because they work and they have a history. And if people follow it and there's regular reporting, people don't feel slighted. And it's a democratically voted upon initiative to build a particular model for delivering. Either it's on the value addition or it could be on the primary production side, can work very effectively. Many churches and even mosques have land and things like that that you can raise wonderful beds and the rest of it. So these cooperative models, as I mentioned, I can disseminate the system, the cooperative governance structure for how that could work to the chamber, and that could be a methodology in which can be deployed. And it's good to have oversight from outside in those organizations as well, because they can provide and glean some measure of intelligence to help things, should things go awry, and to keep them going according to a plan. And there are many cooperatives online that have information that can provide you with the insights necessary for understanding how to build that system. Banking institutions are created around this as well. So it's not foreign, it's not something obtuse or something that people are not familiar with. It can be done. So I hope that answers your question. And yeah, you know, I just want to tell you though, for this forum, for the Agribusiness Chamber, I really appreciate it. And I think you need to have a bit more of them. And hopefully GIZ would be accommodating in that respect with you, because I think there's a lot to be gleaned from this in terms of spreading knowledge around the principles for establishing and building an operation, be it small or be it a medium operation, or to interject in certain areas of the supply chain where there's a need. And we know it's been disrupted from delivering goods, from moving milk, cooling chain, but you name it. So once again, thank you very much. I hope that answers your question. And if anybody else has any other questions, great.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Mr. Naliban, can you take the two questions that were directed to you?
Yes, and my apologies, I'll be very brief because of time. If any of you want us to engage further, you can get in touch with us at the chamber and we'll be happy to provide you support. And the very first one had to do with securing land. Now, as a young graduate, you don't have the funds. You don't, even with regards to what to set up with, it's not available. So my personal advice and what I did was I went back to my village, my hometown, and that's where I got some land. Usually you just have to probably buy a schnapp or buy some drinks for them to perform some whatever they call it, and then you can have access to land. The other thing also is that if you want to go into a much larger scale, get an outgrower system where the farmers themselves bring their land, and then you can take advantage of the crops, and then you can add value. So you don't necessarily need to go into the production. You can actually enter the value chain at a different part of it by probably adding value or aggregating it. And if you're very good at marketing to voila, there's a huge opportunity in regards to market linkages. So that's one, that's a response I'll give in regards to securing land. Don't necessarily want to own things. That's one of the things that we have as a people. Every time we want to be able to refer to it as ours, but we forget that it takes time to be able to build a business. The Nestle's, the PZs, all that we see today, the Heinz, the Hershey's, they didn't just grow in a day or two. It took time. And you can see some of them celebrating 100 years, 50 years, 70 years. How many Ghanaian companies are over 50 at the moment that we can proudly beat our chest about? So let's take a look. So in regards to the networking and partnerships, the chamber provides the platform. So it's now behoves on the individual or the organization to engage on the platform to be able to build those networks for possible collaboration with other organizations. Now, one of the things that I realized personally from my engagements with some legal people was that the laws in Ghana do not encourage partnerships. So because of that, I was actually advised at the time that it would be better to recruit somebody to do the work you pay him off, mainly because of some of the legal tussles that have gone on in the past. But things are changing, and I believe that some of these laws would, as time goes on, would be amended and or probably improved for our benefits and encourage partnerships. But one of the key things that I find as a key challenge for us in Ghana and probably in Africa is that there's always the issue of trust. One person believes that the other one is not being forthright with him, and as a result of that, he cannot give all the information to him and all of that. And because of experience and our belief systems and all that, we don't tend to trust each other, and that's a challenge. But I think that there are so many good people out there who have good hearts, very kind hearts, who are in a position to be able to partner or support organizations to be able to grow. One personal experience I had was that in some of the discussions I've had with some possible financiers, they wanted to take more than 50% of the shares. That means they want to control the organization. If you do not believe in your product and you do not believe in what you're doing, and it's all about making money for the business, probably you may just let the vision go. But what happens is that when you lose control of the vision, then in that case, you're not able to get that fulfillment that comes with the benefits that people derive from, or the value that you're able to provide for people. Now, without practical experience, when I was going to learn, when I was going to start the piggery, one of the things that I did was I went to volunteer at the Nungwa farms, which unfortunately is gradually fading off. The Nungwa farms was supposed to be the authority in Ghana when it comes to pig farming. So anybody at all who, even those who are in Pongtama and all others, used to get support as well from Nungwa farms, but unfortunately it's going down. So one of the things I'll suggest to you is that identify an organization, identify a farm that you'd be able to probably support with, go there, learn out for some time, and then build up from there. If you do not have the opportunity, but you have the opportunity to be able to start a farm or to start engaging a form of agribusiness on your own, what I would advise you to do is to start small. Because I have a friend who started with 157 pigs in the eastern region. After 4 years, he had 35. So that just tells you that he probably didn't understand the fact that the pigs farrow at least twice a year, and with all over 100 sows, had so much, was not able to provide the housing, was not able to feed them, and they were just going away like that. So what I'd advise is that start small and build up on it, build the experience. And look, one of the things that is a bane to us as well is that we love to do comparisons. Oh, this one is doing A, B, C, D, so I think I can also do it and surpass him. No, go at your own pace. Don't let people put pressure on you. So don't pressure yourself as well, so that you can move on. Practical experience and interest, okay, that's for them. And then anybody at all who wants to start with the export business, my advice would be that get the requirements from whoever you're going to buy it from. So get your market first before you do your production, so that whatever you produce fits into the market. In some instances, you are able to identify, you're able to produce, and your chance to have a market. That is fantastic. But from experience, it is always better that you get your market, get to know what exactly their requirements are. So, for instance, if you're buying, let's say, shea butter, and you're looking at the moisture content, amongst other things, you should be able to ensure that some of these you're able to build up on it, and whatever production is being done is based on the requirements. And once you submit, once you deliver, it will be accepted. One key thing is that in starting an agribusiness as well, one of the things that you realize is that we don't do much in terms of recording, documentation. So, for instance, you are a lot of us don't even know how much it costs to be able to feed, for instance, our livestock to get to the stage whereby they are ready for market or for the table. And that is a challenge for a lot of agribusinesses. So if there's any skill at all that I'd want to encourage you to be able to learn and to be consistent with, it is the part where you have to be able to ensure that whatsoever you do is documented. I, for one, I love writing. So every time I have the opportunity to write, even when I go to bed, I have a pen and a notepad by me. And that's because my process of ideation starts even when I'm about going to bed. I sleep over it, I ponder over it, and then I jot them down. So probably that's something that we can also start. Just get a pen and a paper every time. Just whatever ideas come up, you can write them down, so that as you go along, documentation for you doesn't become too much of a challenge. Now, and that is why sometimes it's difficult for some of us to be able to sell our products. Why? Because we are not looking at the cost of our production.
Gotten to the tail end, and we would like to use this opportunity to acknowledge our sponsors, the key partner for this webinar, GIZ Ghana office. I think Mr. Christoph is here. We would like to take a word or two from him, then we'll be able to wrap up for today's section. Mr. Christoph, if we are here, GIZ, a word or two from you will be much appreciated.
Good afternoon, sorry. I think Christoph is off. My name is Judah Nyama, and I'm from the Governance for Inclusive Development program of GIZ Ghana, and we are this webinar is very important, and it's coming timely, and it's very strategic, especially with the individuals or the speakers that have been chosen. And would like to give a thumbs up to the Chamber of Agribusiness for organizing this particular webinar. And again, I would like to thank all the participants who have stayed with us till this time. I think it has gone through to about 4 hours, and I would like to thank us all. My take, or what I would say from my end, especially from the Governance for Inclusive Development program, where we have a component by name Agricultural Business Dialogue, is that this webinar would improve and has given us insights as to how the COVID-19, especially this pandemic that caught not just governments by surprise, but also caught businesses by surprise, of which especially the informal businesses were caught by surprise and did not have any. They were all jittering and didn't know exactly how to reshape themselves and reform themselves to suit this pandemic. Has been hit hard, and in our program we are also looking at how best we can reshape ourselves to form policies and to help in our technical expertise that will suit and help Ghana shape and bring us back to our upward trajectory. So yes, as GIZ, we are opened, available for collaborations in this manner, and we've engaged the Chamber of Agribusiness, and we will continue to engage them where necessary. So thank you so much for the Chamber of Agribusiness for coming up with this initiative, and we are open for such collaborations, and we all are open together to bring Ghana back to the upward trajectory. upward trajectory, even though Professor Bokpin indicated that it may take 2 or 3 years for Ghana to recover again. We hope that collaboratively we would work together to fasten and hasten this process, that it will not take 2 to 3 years, but it even take a year. We know it is ambitious, but collaboratively and working together, we'll be able to do it. Thank you very much.
One of the things I just wanted to say, I'll say in conclusion, is that when it comes to market linkages, like the platforms that we have, it provides us an opportunity. But if you have soya beans and you have maize, livestock farmers are one of your very ready markets. Go to schools, go to hotels, go to them, find out how they need it, and then they'll be able to provide you ready market. On that note, I'd like to say a very big thank you to the Chamber of Agribusiness and for the opportunity to be able to share some of these thoughts and experiences that we have had as a company, Agriculture and More Limited. And we look forward to engaging further to make Ghana agribusiness rise to the pedestal that we are all expecting it to be at. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On behalf of the organizing committee and the chamber, I would like to thank you all, especially our facilitators, Professor Bob Kim, Mr. Ahiaku, Mr. Naliban, and Mr. Fectus Miller. We are most grateful. We say thank you for the time, and thank you for availing yourself for these 4 sections. And to you all, our participants from all walks of life, we had a number of the participants who are outside Liberia. I could see Liberia here, I could see Sierra Leone here, Spain was here, Germany was here, another colleague from China. We are grateful for your participation. Thank you very much. Without you, they wouldn't have been successful. We'd like to finally invite the CEO, Anthony, to give his final closing remarks and officially close us for today. So, Tony, if you are here, over to you.
Thank you very much. And I want to say a big thank you to all participants and also the speakers, especially the participants. Without them, the speakers wouldn't have been speaking to anyone. So I want to appreciate them very much for taking their time to listen to our speakers and to take home and also to share their concerns with us. Yes, it's been a fantastic project, and let me say another appreciation to GIZ. They'll be very fantastic and supportive along the line. GIZ MOAP with Dr. Elka and Mr. Christoph are very fantastic in guiding us to get this off the ground. We hope to have much of this collaboration with them and partnership to deepen the agribusiness space. Yes, Prof made very strategic statements that I think that we need to address certain things with regards to the agribusiness. First of all, I must say that yes, the COVID has been a disruptive effect on the value chain and the supply chain. There is a need for us to look at the long-term agriculture or agribusiness policy, which affects the private sector investment area. Without this, we may not be working very well in pushing ahead with investment. Prof also made mention of that Ghana is not a service economy, which I also agree with him. We are a production economy, and that gives the impetus or the need for government to make some production policies. And while we continue to do production policies, that must be linked up to the marketing policies to drive the generality of the value chain. We also heard him speak about the fact that there is no direct link to improve livelihoods. You know, we need to talk more about this. FAO have been speaking about agriculture social intervention mechanisms. Okay, we do not have it as a country. Whether economic interventions, whether social interventions, there is the need for an agricultural intervention. Okay, what interventions are we doing for especially the rural agriculture sector to be more economically and socially independent and robust? So that is, and this COVID actually serves us the opportunity to do that. There is also the need for an increased atmosphere of regulatory investment, which otherwise will also boost the lending area for the agribusiness sector. To that end, we heard Mr. Andrews speaking about the fact that there will be a need for a whole operational area with regards to the investment sector, lending rate, how we should also probably work very well with the investment sector, the banking, the financial sector, to be able to model very specific lending or investment models or alternative financing. So I think that the chamber have a lot to do with the kind of recommendations that is coming from them. Our other two speakers of Fetis and Naliban have spoken very well of experience across the value chain, looking at the logistics, the equipment level, and for him to also travel from here to South Africa and be looking for equipment for cashew. That tells us that there is a huge opportunity for agriculture machinery productivity in Ghana. Those interested in investing into manufacturing, there are a lot of companies in Ghana that have the capacity, but otherwise do not have the financial powers to be able to do that. So it gives a lot of impetus. Yes, Naliban spoke about the need for us to harness the value chain and increase our market viability. Logistically, we had problems with supply chain, which he comes across as an expert on. So on this note, I want to say thank you for all that expose and the recommendation. I must add that the chamber on its own is working in a number of areas that I think members and the participants will be very happy to hear. We are about to launch what we call the Ghana Agriculture Resilience Fund, which goes into support things of this nature with regards to the pandemic and other challenges that may come with regards to future happenings. We are also working to launch what we call the Ghana Agribusiness Cooperative Credit Union. Everything is almost ready, and I think that very soon the announcement will be made. The coordinator, who himself is the director of policy, Dr. Kwejo, and his team are working on the Ghana Agribusiness Investment Compendium. So to a large extent, the chamber is working on a number of areas that I think will help in driving the alternative financing and investment into the various value chain activities. One thing I picked from one person, I'm not quite sure the name, but she was of the view that a Ghana Agribusiness Investment Fund could be very critical. Yes, we have been working on Ghana Agriculture Development Fund for some time now. That was supposed to encapsulate the investment criteria, but this is another opportunity for us to look at. For the past 2 years, we've been meeting the presidency and the Ministry of Finance to drive home the need for this fund. So we will go back to the drawing board. We wish to acknowledge the role that every one of you have played in getting this done, especially the committee that have worked on this, Bernard and Edem and his group, and also the chamber administrator, Nana Poku. We appreciate you all. And Doc, over to you. Thank you very much, and I appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Thank you once again to our participant. So lastly, before we go, we would like you to pay close attention to your inbox. We'll be sending you the details of the program after this afternoon. I will be sending you the recordings. We'll be sending you other documentations in terms of the PPT and the materials that were used in this section. We'll also be pleading with you to help us evaluate this section, to help us improve subsequent sections in the form of an evaluation survey, and so we'll send a link to your inbox as well. Please endeavor to help us evaluate and be very objective and critical as much as you can. It helps us. We are not averse to criticism. It helps us to be able to improve. So as much as possible, we need you to evaluate the webinar and make suggestions and recommendations that will help us to improve subsequent section. I would like to also use the opportunity to especially thank my team. Bernard, you've been very fantastic. Nana Puku, if I'm here, thank you very much. Enabel, Ebenezer, thank you very much. And to all who have participated, who have provided assistance in one form or the other, we are most grateful. And would like to officially close here and expect our messages in your inboxes very soon. Thank you very much and have a nice afternoon and a good lunch. Thank you.